fraudulent unemployment payments.
Oh
And I'm like,
my
what?
God.
It took me 9 months to clear that up. I had to
This looks different
go to the unemployment
in terms of the parking.
division and file a fraud case and get a new 1099-G from them and then send it back to
These four spaces here.
Two different,
Yeah, and then there's the spaces over
Rob, are you talking about 34 Clinton?
Yeah.
So there's two different scenarios that they're presenting, because they want you to be
that's
that.
our one.
One requires slightly higher waiver,
Yeah.
but it's removing some of the from the front yard.
Oh, it makes me feel a little better anyway.
All right. Good evening, good evening.
That's good,
Yeah.
actually, because most of the.
Mr. Posen isn't here yet. I think he's running a little late.
lawyer,
Shall we,
counsel. Wait, pause.
shall we wait for him?
I believe we should.
For,
Give him a minute.
Give him a minute, okay.
who are we waiting for?
Dan Posen.
Dan isn't here.
Dan Posen. Actually, you could probably read this, right? Read the introductors.
Yeah,
You
this
ready,
is,
Steve?
I could,
this is hugely better. And my guess is they want to, they're making the garage bigger and probably need a waiver conference.
No,
But then this is the only,
yeah, that's much better.
oh, man.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. Yeah, that's
The other
nice.
thing, I'm gonna make another design suggestion tonight, so we'll see how they. I'm sure you've had this, you put two buildings together, you have like building A and building B.
here we go.
It's still 6 months ago, but all those were installed a year ago.
Good.
My original drawings were from a year and a half ago. I probably should have caught it earlier.
Architecture, like I could imagine this
Wait a minute, he's going the wrong way.
modern, largely glass, like different
Small for a cable,
thing,
it's big around.
right? So that not, that doesn't.
We gotta
put
try.
two buildings that are somehow smashed up against
It's
each
like the
other.
original design for the Oceana building. Had a big
Had
thing
it kind of,
building.
so what it would mean,
Was it 3 pages long? I got it.
what it would mean is like
think so.
this would be treated as a.
No, no, you don't,
different-
no, you don't need to read it. Do you remember his memo?
I
Which
I'd
one
at least
was
like
it?
to see what it looks like.
I tried to read everything this
Bel Air.
today.
Kind of thing.
Yes,
Feller, 3 pages?
yes.
Yes, yes. No, we all
We
saw
got
it.
I saw it.
We all
I
saw
did see it. Thank you.
I'm not like saying.
We couldn't miss it.
Still enclosed. I didn't get the letter myself.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Greetings and welcome to the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry for March 2, 2003. We have a long and interesting agenda tonight. Before we start the official agenda, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. We do have a full agenda, and we want to make sure that we have time to review all applications and to afford those who would attend the meeting the opportunity to provide feedback. To achieve this, we ask, please, that all applicants and the public to do the following. If you're here to present a continued application, we ask the applicants, please keep all presentations brief and highlight what has changed from submitted plans from last time. We often have, or usually have, things that come up for 2 or 3 meetings, and we don't need to go through the whole story every meeting. We want to focus on the items that were left over. All members of the public interested in speaking will be given an opportunity to be heard. We ask keep your comments within the general 3-minute speaker, minutes 3 per speaker. And if the point has already been expressed by somebody who spoke before you go, please don't necessarily repeat what was said, but to say that you agree or disagree with what was said. That would be very helpful in trying to keep our meetings constrained. Thank you very much. That being said, I would like to move that we open the meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry for March 2, 2003.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have a number, we got 10 items on our agenda. The first item, number 1, is 111 Bel Air Drive, continuation of public hearing for proposed addition and renovation of single-family home. And I take it, council, that we need to reopen the public hearing? Yes, I move that we open the public hearing. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Am I ready?
Yep.
Announce me something. Anyway, Niall Kane, I'm the architect for Gabriel DeBerry and Alice Child. We've been here before, so as instructed, I will, go over just the changes. Now, I want my share screen here. Sorry, you're gonna have to help me share screen. Share screen.
We have to figure this out.
Should work. So again, this is 111 Bel Air Street in Dobbs Ferry, and we are proposing an addition and renovation to this existing house. And we've gone through some of the basic elements before. I'll just brief, this is the new house. This portion.
I think you missed my message.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to do it super brief, but
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I don't do it, okay.
Highlight
Okay,
what's
fine.
changed.
Addition on, okay. I was trying
Is there anything new since our,
Well, yes, there is.
Oh,
But a
good.
couple things I just want to point out, because there was some letter from the neighbors about, our addition changing the existing topography. And the fact of the matter is, everywhere we are building is on topography that has been greatly altered over the years. For example, the addition, as you know, is over this existing stone terrace. It's a little bit further north than that, but it's basically over that. And the addition on the back here is over this existing stone, stone terrace here, although we're removing it in this case, we're moving it in that case too. So again, nothing about the addition is altering the existing topography. And we know, of course, there's an issue of the legalization of the topography as well, which I will get into, and there's some alterations, some new, that doesn't work. Again, this is the side here. Again, all of this addition, everything is literally within an area that has been altered with steps and or stone terraces and so forth. This is the back elevation. Again, the elevation, the south elevation, and we have made a change here. We have pushed this deck back so that it is in plane with the addition, which is what we're calling the pool room table in that room. So again, that is further from the neighbors to the south, because I know they were concerned about that. We have, the last presentation, I offered that we could possibly remove a carport, a car widening of the driveway. We looked at it again and realized we could improve this vastly, and it really is important to have two cars, as you know. Not to have a situation where you're back to front and can't get out, and it's very awkward. So we've decreased the size of it from quite a bit. It's only 18 feet wide, and it is 9'6" from the property line at the worst case. I'll show it on the site plan as well. The other thing we talked about last time is that we are going to just remove the existing block wall that was added here completely, and not even set it back, but have it removed and restore the existing grade adjacent to the property to the south and, of course, into the west here. And in part, of course, as was pointed out last time, we want to be careful about this tree. Another thing that was new is that you should have received a report from the arborist stating that the tree is perfectly healthy and everything's fine and there's nothing to be concerned about. And of course, we're improving this condition, which you've seen, that sort of a bathtub was built around that tree, which we were going to remove. And the other thing we did is, by removing 80 square feet, we are able to, of this deck here. Let me back up a little bit. As you recall, we had allocated a significant percentage of this backyard area to what is likely 15 to 25% steep slope. We increased that by removing 80 feet. We've dedicated the entire backyard area to 15 to 25% slope, which is certainly in excess of what it was, just given the fact that we're doing that entire backyard, the entire fill area, except for the little portion around the tree, which we know to be level-ish. I mean, it's not exceeding 15 to 25 in that zone. That was suggested in one of the letters that you received, I think, from the neighbor, that the deck, and we discussed this last time, that the deck isn't building coverage, but a raised deck is to be considered. Is that right?
It
Yeah.
is, if it's
Building coverage.
If it's on top of a concrete structure, it's building coverage.
Yeah, so we're removing that, that portion. I mean, if it wasn't, then we'd be, if all of our raised decks weren't building coverage and were lot coverage, we'd be able to, we'd be even further under the maximum building allowance. The other thing we did is that Dan, again, pointed out, made sure that we are deducting the steep slope area from the net lot area. Which seemed to be a bit of a debate about that issue. Whoops. It's a problem reading this document. I don't know. The other thing, an engineer had mentioned that as you know, we're pushing back this retaining wall, the existing retaining wall sitting on top of the older one. We pushed it back about 3 feet. We're going to do it to 4 feet, which is something that was pointed out.
No, it's actually a 5-foot separation
From what?
from the first wall back. For it to be a separate wall, it has to have a 5-foot separation.
Doesn't it depend on the height of the wall?
Say again?
Depends
In
on the height of the
determining
wall.
the height of the wall.
Sorry?
In determining the height of the wall, if it's within 5 feet of the other wall, it's considered one wall. There has to be a separation of 5 feet.
It's considered one wall, but is that related to the engineering of the wall to make sure that it is,
No, that's in our code.
it's just a code visual, it's not related to structural engineering, I mean.
That's a zoning provision. In other words, to
Zoning.
avoid a zoning variance, you'd have to just, I was mistaken at 4 feet. It's actually 5 feet.
Fine, I just wasn't, I just didn't know if it was a structural issue you were concerned about or, and sorry, this is an important drawing. This is added to the set of drawings and was submitted to you. Again, this was brought up at the last meeting. We did a series of sections through the site, and I had made sure the engineer, the surveyor gave us top-of-wall elevations for the existing stone wall and the relatively new block wall. So we had all that data, and we had points along the existing house. So we cut a series of sections, and you can see the sections here that analyze, and it ranges from 15% to 25, as I think was right at the very edge. Actually, the slope is most dramatic at the south end of the very south end, and then it sort of eases up, so to speak, as it comes across the property. So again, we took that data, realized we needed 80 square feet, more or less. We took the deck off, which was serendipitous in a way, because I know it sort of was something the neighbors were concerned about. So we removed that, and to be honest, I think it's a nicer design with that little bit of deck. Juice in this computer. Error processing the page. And one of the things we did also, I've gone through the most important parts of this presentation. I can the X out and come back into it, I suppose. There was one other sort of important drawing I thought that we did do a view study from 120 Bel Air, showing that this proposed construction does not interfere with the view. There's a wonderful broad view corridor from that perspective. Maybe this works. Yeah. Minor stuff. Engineering comments and picking up the 24-inch sump, which I showed on the elevation, on the details. This is the view platform diagram, just to show that there's no view platform in that zone. It's very fuzzy, by the way, on the website. Put a more detailed drawing, perhaps. But anyway, we're right here in the middle of this yellow area. Again, setbacks. There was one thing, we know we discussed this sky exposure plane issue, that the very, very, I get my directions mixed up, but southwest corner, we're just a little bit over this sky exposure plane. But this is something that's common throughout that whole stretch of Bel Air. And I have a little diagram, just because this is a project I was working on as well, at 125 Bel Air. This is the sky exposure plane. You can see in the middle, that's an existing condition. And it's just the fact that it drops off steeply. The elevation change from the front to the back properties, it's not exactly the same, of course, as 111, but it's similar. So this is just a typical condition all along that street. And we are far better than this particular case between and 125. Again, view corridor, we looked at that. This is just the view that, we really don't feel, there's going to be no impact on view of the river to 101 Bel Air. And this is the view from 120, and we just went up right at the top, near the entrance to the house. And it's got a gorgeous view, by the way. This is the impact, if you can call it that, of the view. And in fact, the fact that the facade curves away is a positive, because it creates more of an opening from this view corridor from that perspective. And the same thing is true of the adjacent house, which is right in the middle of this nice wide vista. Yeah, I don't know. This isn't. We made some modifications to the kitchen in order to facilitate moving a portion of the deck, which is actually a nicer, sort of serendipitous, nicer design. I guess as far as the ARB's portion of this is concerned, there's a change right here to the elevation, which again I think is nicer, not having that deck sort of cantilevered off to the side here. I think that's an improvement. Operating again.
Okay, thank you now.
And I think I covered everything. Enough?
Yep.
Good,
Thank you.
good, thank you again. It's a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Stephen Accinelli from Veneruso, Curto, Schwartz and Curto. Good to see everyone again. I was here last month. As the board will recall, I represent Natalie Trojan and Bruce Jonas, who reside at 101 Bel Air Drive, which is the adjacent property to the south. I submitted our supplemental submission a couple of days ago. Hopefully all the board members and staff have had a chance to review it. I'm not going to go through that. Obviously, I understand there's sensitivity with respect to time. So certainly.
Yeah, please keep any comment new. I mean, we've heard before concerns, but I think it would be helpful for us to hear any new concerns.
Well, what I'd like to do respectfully, I'd like to stress a few items because.
We did get your letter. We all read
I
it.
did.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm not going, so am I not to proceed?
Is there anything new? That's not in the letter?
There's nothing new that's not in the letter. I will tell you that. But I would respectfully like to reiterate, even sitting here this evening, in listening to the presentation, there still seems to be some uncertainty with respect to the interpretation of the code, the application of the code, the plans that have been prepared and presented. We are relying on this board in the village to confirm, review, and interpret the plans. Make sure that they are compliant with the ordinance. We respectfully have submit that. In some ways, they are not. I'm not an architect. I've been working with the neighbor. He's been assisting. Mr. Jones is an architect. He has been assisting us and reviewed the plans. He also has submitted a letter, and he has concerns on the technical level that he has raised, many of which, if he is correct, would require variances in connection with this application, which would be an entirely different board from this board. So I would like to, board's permission, just have one slide put up. That's okay? Thank you. This was included in my package, and this also goes to something that was mentioned by the architect a little bit ago. If you look to the left, that was the pre-existing topography. If you look to the center, that is the illegal construction work that was performed in 2019, resulting in the conditions you see here on the right, which are illegal conditions. To the extent that these illegal conditions were the basis for the calculations that are set forth in the plan, that's inappropriate. Any conditions on this site that are used in the calculations that are illegal conditions are not appropriate to serve as the baseline for the village's review under the code. The fact that things are a little bit above the view plane, or they don't comply completely with the zoning code, that's not acceptable. That's not appropriate. I'm not aware of a de minimis exclusion in Dobbs Ferry zoning code that allows for little things here and there that are not code compliant to not go to the zoning board for a variance. The fact that conditions may exist at other properties is, again, not relevant to the application before this board pertaining to this property. It's not persuasive, it's not binding, and it has no effect on plans before this board relative to this application. I implore this board and the village to review these plans, make sure this project is compliant with the zoning ordinance. That is the board's obligation. We certainly can't do it ourselves, so that's why we are here before. My client lives in the community. He's a member of this community. He is entitled to the appropriate deference and review as part of this process, just as much as the applicant is entitled to an appropriate review of this process. So I would ask the board, to the extent that there are any open issues, this public hearing be kept open, that no decision be rendered on this application until the board and the village are satisfied that everything is in order, and that no decision be issued tonight. And if in fact one is to be issued this evening, based on the plans, that this application be denied in its current form.
Thank you.
Any questions for me?
No.
No.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I defer to council for help on.
Oh, wait, there's another speaker.
Somebody else.
No, I'm sorry.
So I agree with everything my attorney said, so I won't repeat it, but I do want to add a few things.
Who are you?
Oh, sorry, Bruce Jonas, I'm at 101 Bel Air Drive. I'm the house closest to and most impacted by this project, and I want to say that there has been so much misleading information. If you remember last time, I said, oh, we'll lose our view to the north. And the architect came up and said, oh, no, they won't lose their view to the west. I didn't say to the west, to the north. Today he repeated, oh, they won't lose their view to the west. I didn't say we would. We won't. Neighbors across the street will when you expand the house 20 feet this way and 4 feet this way. That's true. That they will lose the view to the west, and we will to the north. And I will, honestly, I have so much I would like to say, but with due respect for the board's request, I won't. But I do want to add one other thing, which is I know that the village eliminated the AHRB and assigned its responsibilities to the planning board in an effort to speed up the review process. So I'm confident now that the planning board will recognize the importance not just of speed, but of protecting neighbors who will be most impacted by a project, in this case, one that flouts the village code. That's why the village requires a steep slope analysis with a topographical survey and dictates how to calculate the steep slope reduction based on natural topography and not on work that was done illegally. And that's why the village limits the size of a building on a steep slope and enforces the sky exposure plane. We've made further points in the letters we've submitted, but I'll end here by thanking the board for reading those letters and giving them due consideration.
Thank you, sir.
But anybody else want to make?
Yeah, and I almost respond and then I will.
Okay.
No.
No.
Yeah, I just want to take a bit of exception to the suggestion that this doesn't comply with zoning. The project complies entirely with zoning. We have obtained the required zoning variances from the ZBA before this process started, and I explained that last time, so I won't explain it again. It was just, well, a little vestibule, and for the fact that the covered porch is 1 foot 4 1/4 inch longer than it is permitted by code without getting a variance. And yes, I'm talking about getting variances. I'm not suggesting that it's not. I'm saying variances are needed. You seem to be changing what I'm saying to suggest that I'm saying doesn't comply with code, and that's obviously not what I'm saying. I think it's pretty clear. The other thing, as far as that, the steep slope of the existing property prior to the fill, that was, yes, not, permits were not obtained for that work. We all know that. We're going to great effort to try to legalize that issue. Legalization of things that were not done is not an unusual thing, actually. I've done it many times. And again, we are allocating that entire backyard. We're going to say, regardless of the fact that there is likely area that is less than 15% slope, we are saying, fine. The entire thing, with the exception of a little bit around the tree, is within 15 to 25%, and we've done a pretty detailed analysis with elevation points that were done by a surveyor that he guarantees are true. We know are accurate because you can see the wall. I've shown pictures of the existing wall. The other thing I didn't show, which I sent, I have to show pictures of it, but there are 3 houses in the area that exceed the floor area of this house. One sort of diagonally up, actually pretty much across the street from 101 Bel Air, is 2,900 square feet. A floor area, the one further down than what was done recently, redone, is 4,200 square feet. There's houses down on Colonial, which is 6,000 square feet. There are a number of houses that exceed the square footage of this. And if you look at the plan, not that big a plan. It really isn't. I mean, I don't want to waste time going to the plan again, but if you look at the plan, there's the kitchen, dining room, living room. It is a very reasonable layout and a very reasonably sized plan. There's no huge great room. Yeah, I just think it's hard to make a argument that this house does not fit into the neighborhood, because it does in terms of scale. My personal opinion is it's a nice design. We've received letters of commendation and support from 6 people. One phoned in last time and didn't send a letter, I think. In fact, that was a trustee, I think. Yeah, I think I've touched on everything.
Thank you.
I really do think. And a few comments from the engineer that, of course, we're going to comply with. They're pretty straightforward comments, just technical things. Yeah, I don't think I have much more to add, but if Gabriel wants to say something.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriel DeBerry. I'm the owner of, along with my beautiful wife, of 111 Bel Air Drive. I'm going to be very respectful of everyone's time. This is the first time we're first on the agenda. I know what it's like to not be first on the agenda, and I know that everyone just wants to get to a vote, which is great. The new things I want to add really pertain to the attitude that we took when we were putting together the plans, which was we wanted, because of our misstep with the wall, which we should have gotten permitted when we started this project, we went to an architect that was very well known to the town, knew the code frontward and backward, and we instructed him from the beginning, this has to be by the book. We don't want to pardon my French, piss off the board anymore. This has to be purely by the code. We want buffers across the board, so there's no question here. And that is what Niall did. He built up from the existing footprint of the house. We made accommodations that we've already discussed and we won't go into in terms of tapering the roof so that people can have sight lines that they might not otherwise have had. But the biggest accommodation that we made, and this is new material, is we actually met with Bruce and Natalie or I did, for an hour and a half and went through our entire presentation, page by page, hearing out all of their concerns the entire time. Now, we also spoke to our other neighbors too to get their feelings. We made changes as a result of that. The product of those conversations were actually great, right? So we have greenery on the south side of the house that wasn't there. That was Bruce and Natalie's idea. We included windows on the south side of the pool room because they didn't want just a wall there. That's expense to us, and that was also Bruce and Natalie's idea. So we were very willing to accommodate them to much expense to ourselves, and we were trying to be as reasonable as we can be. But they've consistently asked more than what we consider reasonable. For example, they demanded that we paint our house beige. Our house, not their house. That's up to us. They suggested that we have a driveway, a circular driveway in our front yard. And when I told him our kids play in the front yard, Bruce's response was, I think you should make it mandatory that they play in the backyard. He knew that he overstepped when he made that comment, and he apologized. But the point of me even bringing it up now is to say Bruce and Natalie seem to believe that we exist at the pleasure of Bruce and Natalie. But this is our house, and we've tried to do everything by the code. We've included buffers throughout. We scaled back the deck, as Niall said, 80 square feet. And I will tell you, I fought him tooth and nail on that. I didn't want to lose 80 square feet to the deck. But the reason why is the steep slope calculation. I made him go through the entire calculation with me. And he said, there's no point in going into this meeting with anything but clear evidence that we are within code. We don't even want to get close to the line. Back off on this one. And I eventually took Niall's recommendation there. Alice and I were both going to speak, but there are a lot of other people who want to speak tonight. I think the last thing we want to say is this is a legacy for our home. One of the things that was in the neighbor's letter was, the attorney's letter, is this house is going to exist far after us. And we think, yes, and that's great. You heard from overwhelming number of our neighbors who strongly support this, including neighbors directly impacted, such as 82 Magnolia on the west side. We've redone the wall. She's written in support, says it's going to look beautiful. And I also noted with interest that the attorney said this is not a popularity contest, which, in so saying, kind of indicates that this is a really popular project in the neighborhood. And so there's an implication there that perhaps Bruce and Natalie's opinion should be elevated above everybody else's in the neighborhood. But again, this is not the way the code works. Everything in the plan is well within code. We've ensured that we've gone through great expense, even testing soil for $5,000, testing the health of the tree again, which was already tested 6 months ago because they said there was damage to the tree. At a certain point, enough is enough. You've heard these arguments many, many times before, which is why you're rushing now through his presentation today with good reason. You've given all the deep looks that they keep asking for. It's time for a vote. It's time to turn the page. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, you wanted to keep all comments to 3 minutes? I'm just
Yes.
reminding the audience.
Okay.
And it has to be new material.
Let me just apologize to begin with. At this point, and I've been around a long time, as you know, I have trouble hearing, and I have trouble, speaking as well. But there's some comments here that I just have to respond to, and that's regarding compliance with the code. I did submit yesterday a letter outlining the non-compliance with what I feel are the most gregarious sections or violations of the zoning code. They're not in full compliance with the code, and even the procedure does not comply with the code requirements. And I outlined that in detail in the letter that I submitted. And evidently, I missed the deadline yesterday by a couple of hours. So, but I understand you do have the letter. And I was going to read it to you, but it's pretty technical, and I'm not going to. Good, thank you. I don't want to.
No.
But please look at the letter, and there are specific requirements of the zoning code that have not been met. And I just want to point out one is the measurements of steep slopes. Steep slopes are critical. This project begins with steep slope. It established the extent of coverage of the new building, and I do believe the project, let me just, I do believe the project is out of scale for the lot. It doesn't belong on this lot. It's because of the steep slope. The steep slope calculations on the drawings now allow 1/10 of a square foot leeway in order to max out. So and that's not coincidental, that's manipulation. But the code states that steep slopes shall be determined based on a survey indicating contour lines at 2 foot or smaller intervals. Key word is based on a survey. For the rear yard analysis, there's no survey. I don't know how they established the elevations, but it's not on any of the drawings. There are profiles that he talked about on the drawings, but the profiles do not cover the entire rear yard. They exclude the steep slope or the pre-steep slope that was under the terrace. So I would suggest to comply with the code, you must have a topographical survey. That's what the code says, black and white, base it on a survey. So you're making up, or the applicant's making up his own rules and doing profiles. That's not what the code says. The code says on a survey. Why can't we do that? There are forensic surveyors that do this all the time. Go back 3.5 years, you construct a topographic survey. That can be done to comply with the code. If you don't do it, you're not complying with the code. And that's one. And there are several others, another 6 items that I talk about that is not compliance with the code.
We did get your we did get your letter, and we read your letter.
Okay, good. So I won't go through it all.
Thank you.
But the point I wanted to make is it's not in compliance with the code. And also, I'll just say I would have hoped that the board would have done a detailed analysis of what the code requires and what it doesn't. And I know the engineering letter says he has not reviewed this project for compliance with the zoning code.
The building department reviews zoning.
The building, but
They
that
have
hasn't
reviewed
been
it.
done yet.
They've done it.
They've done it.
In fact, I understood that would be done after board approval. But if you approve the project, then you review it for code, that doesn't make sense. So anyway, I'm very confused about the process. I will say I'm confused about the AHRB review that's concurrent with this review. I mean, as you know, I spent years on the AHRB, so but I haven't heard any discussion or seen any submission regarding materials, for example, colors, material samples. These are AHRB issues. How does that happen? When does that happen? And I'm not encouraging it to happen, but anyway, compliance with the zoning code is critical.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wishes to be heard?
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, do you want the back and forth, or do you feel comfortable with everything?
I'm comfortable. You don't need to read. We've read everything. Any board members have any other questions?
Any other members of the public? That's it?
Anybody online?
No.
No.
If so, I move we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And?
I have a resolution.
Good.
The board would like to-
Oh, thank you.
So, whereas the owners are seeking site plan approval to build a multiple additions and alterations to the owner's single-family home. The property is located at 111 Bel Air Drive. Whereas the project is classified under seeker as a type 2 action, whereas the application received a front yard variance for 9 feet 6 inches for the covered porch and 4 feet 10 inches for the vestibule at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting and its October 12th, 2022 meeting. Whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on February 2nd, 2023, and it was concluded on March 2nd, 2023, during which time all those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard and provide written comments. Therefore, now be it resolved, the planning board for the village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasonings set forth below, the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. The approved plans, the site plans stamped, dated October 11th, 2022, last revised February 13th, 2023. The following conditions must be met for the planning board chair for signature. That includes all outstanding village engineer comments, stormwater maintenance, and any engineering issues raised in the hearing. The applicant shall pay all outstanding consultant review and legal fees, and the applicant must demonstrate that the proposed planting plan must meet the 50% replacement plan as required by section 351I.
Thank you. I move, all in favor?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
You have one more resolution for the architectural and historic review approval. And again, whereas the applicants are seeking AHRB approval to build multiple additions for a single-family home, whereas the AHRB is familiar with the project site and the general vicinity and has reviewed the application in accordance to Article 4, Architectural Historic Review Board. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for AHRB approval is granted, and it refers again to the February 13th, 2023 site plan.
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. We're done.
Thank you. Good luck.
Next item on our agenda is 143 Ashford Avenue. Approval for proposed alterations and additions to home.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, never, that's it, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's on so many lists, but it's 143.
Who's presenting? Is somebody online?
Good evening, members of the board.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. My name is David Orango. I'm working for Rui Arellano, the architect, and I am representing Mrs. Fishhoff for 143 Ashford Avenue in Dobbs Ferry. In the previous meeting, we presented the addition for the members of the board or the request of the, make a couple adjustments for the project to, see how we raise it up the roof and how that affect, the aesthetics of the front of the house. We did that one. And one of the requests from the meeting was, to check it out for the heights according with the code for the Dobbs Ferry. We did the analysis and we presented to the town and to the board. And we come out with the into the zoning charge for the maximum roof height is supposed to then need to be 35 by the requirements. The existing is 24.6 feet, and the proposed will be 31.8. And the maximum height to the eave is supposed to, for the requirements in the code, is 28 feet. The existing is 20 feet. And the proposed is 27.5 feet. And we make the analysis and the drawing to demonstrate the study. I don't know if you see my screen. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
We
Oh,
also have drawings, well, some of us do up on a,
okay.
I've had it,
Can you see my screen?
absolutely had it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is the analysis we provide, it's if you see in the drawing, we make the ties according with the requirement from the building code from Dobbs Ferry. And we showing here, we don't exceed the the requirements. And also we put in the information in the title and the zoning charge for clarification of everything. And so far we are complying with everything the board requests.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll open it. I move that we open the public hearing. Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Anybody here to speak?
Anyone wish to speak on this application?
Anybody online?
Well then. Any questions or comments from the board?
So thank you, David. I think you did a nice job
Thank you very much.
making the changes. So thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
If there's no one wishes to be heard, no board members, I would move that we close the public hearing. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Do we have a,
We do have resolutions.
thank you.
So whereas the applicant and owner is seeking site plan approval to build an addition expansion on the second floor. Property is located 143 Ashford Avenue. Whereas this application received variances at the Zoning Board of Appeals at its November 9, 2022 meeting, which includes side yard setbacks, combined side yard setbacks, as well as 5 inches to construct an addition onto the house. And whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on March 2nd, 2023, and it was concluded on March 2nd, 2023, during at which time all those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard. So now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, that the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. The approved plan specifically refer to the latest revisions dated February 8th, 2023, that the planning board's applicant must receive all approvals required by other governmental approving agencies, that the applicant must address to the full satisfaction of the village engineer and all outstanding stormwater and stormwater maintenance agreements, and the applicant must pay all outstanding consultant review and legal fees.
Good. That's the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good.
And then I have one more, which is the AHRB, where the applicant seeking AHRB approval to build an addition and an expansion on the second floor. Whereas the AHRB is familiar with the project site and general vicinity and has reviewed the application in accordance with Article 4 Architectural and Historic Review Board. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasons set forth below, the application for architectural and historic review approval is granted, subject to the following conditions. And again, the approved plans specifically refer to the February 8th, 2023 site plan.
I move adoption. Is second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, if I got this straight, is 2 Osceola Avenue.
Good evening, Nick Faustini, architect on behalf of 2 Osceola Avenue. We presented to the board last month. We do not have any new information for this month. So we're just attending the meeting as requested.
I'm not sure if we have any questions. The board have any other questions on this?
Open it up.
Open the public hearing?
We can,
I think we closed.
No,
Did we
think we
close the
closed
public
the
hearing
public-
last?
I
Yeah.
think we closed the public hearing.
I think we
Oh,
closed.
So we're just here for.
We're just here for the resolution.
Okay.
Do
Okay.
we have a resolution?
Yes.
Oh,
we do. All right. Whereas the applicant is seeking site plan approval to complete interior alterations, build an addition within the existing building footprint and replace the existing deck, and making alterations to the exterior roof line. Whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on February 2nd, 2023, and it was concluded on February 22nd, February 2nd, 2023, during at which time all those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard. Whereas the planning board reviewed, examined letters and reports and memorandum from the planning board's consultants. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board of Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based on the findings and reasons set forth below, the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. The approved plans refer to the site plans last revised January 19th, 2023. That the applicant must address all to the full satisfaction, the village engineer and all outstanding stormwater maintenance agreement and engineering issues raised in the hearings and documents submitted to the board, including verification regarding the replacement of the wood deck, and then the applicant shall pay all outstanding consultant review and legal fees in connection with the planning board and review of this application. And there's one other condition, that there shall be no intrusion of any structure into the wetlands or ponds.
Good. I move we adopt that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're done.
And then if you have AHRB. Sorry, one more. Again, the applicant is seeking AHRB approval for the renovations. The AHRB is familiar with the project site and reviewed the application in accordance with the Architectural Research Review Board requirements. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based on the findings and reasons set forth below, the application for AHRB is approved, and the approved plans again specifically refer to the January 19th, 2023 plans.
Good. I move we adopt the resolution. Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good.
Thank you.
Next phase of our meeting tonight are a number of pre-submission conferences. The first is North Mountain Drive, continuation of a pre-submission conference for proposed plans to construct a new home at a vacant lot.
So I just want to take 2 minutes before the applicant starts providing their presentation. I think one of the issues that have been outstanding dealing with this is the interpretation of the requirement for building coverage. That has been determined by Dan to be calculated on the net the net lot area as opposed to the gross lot area. So right now, the applicant has a couple different options before them. Technically, they could go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask for an area variance for that particular building coverage, or they could proceed in front of your board and ask for a waiver to the building coverage. They could also ask for an interpretation to the Zoning Board of Appeals on the building coverage issue. And then the last option is that they could also reduce the size of the house. So my recommendation would be that the applicant provides additional information to this board on their plan, why they think their plan would be best suited for the size that it is now, and then that the board can ask questions based upon that, and you can consider that for the waiver. So choose.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kristen Wilson, along with Patty Steinschneider. We're here for Tanya Giglio, the owner of 0 North Mountain Drive. And as was just suggested to you, we do have a couple of options to proceed down. Our ask for tonight is one that the public hearing, we believe you have sufficient information at this point in time to actually set the public hearing for the next month. We do have our engineer who is virtual, and between Patty and myself, we could probably answer any outstanding questions. Our second request this evening is to prove to you that we, under these circumstances, we do believe we should be entitled to a waiver. And I'll be specific, it's not with respect to lot size. That we're already kind of pending before the Board of Appeals on the Zoning Board of Appeals. But this deals with the coverage, lot coverage by buildings. So, and I will go through this slide presentation as quickly as possible. I've timed myself a couple times.
you.
It's a little over 3 minutes, but it's under 6. So quickly, we're in the OF2 zoning district, 20,000 square feet minimum net lot area. That's again what we're before the Board of Appeals on. The outstanding issue is maximum lot coverage by buildings, maximum lot coverage by impervious surface. We do believe, for the record, that it should be calculated based on gross, not on net, but we'll save most of those substantive arguments for the zoning board if we go that route. Goes through what the zoning bulk regulation table says. This picture, I just wanted to highlight this particular picture. And this is a pictorial description of what the words under lot coverage say. And it is clear from this picture that lot coverage is lot depth by lot width. That is the gross lot area.
I don't think we can decide this. It's really the building inspector or the ZBA. So making an argument to us is not that useful.
Okay. Well, so you understand the context in which we wanted to present this is that we are, but for the lot size because of the steep slopes, we are zoning compliant. We don't need, if you use the net lot area, or gross lot area rather, we don't need a variance. So I will move on. Again, the discussion of impervious coverage, it does not mention net lot area. This list is, and this was submitted with Mr. Steinschneider's submission to the board. These are a list of, kind of off the top of his head, other projects that have gone through the entitlement process, through the land use process, in which the gross lot area was used.
Are you showing us that?
I'm sorry, it's just part of the presentation.
No, because that's part of, yeah,
See,
okay.
it's not in our,
It's not what
you can't convince us because we can't make that decision.
So that's okay.
So this is a general rendering of what the proposed home will look like. Patty will go through quickly in the context of how this house fits squarely, really right in the middle of in the context of the other homes in the neighborhood. Patty did more than just the immediate abutting neighbors. And Patty, I will. I just click down. One click.
Up there or down here?
Oh, okay.
See if I can make it work. So basically, Dobbs Ferry has a requirement that we consider what's called the context area. Context area has a very interesting definition. I did not limit myself to the context limit definition, which would only include the properties adjacent and within 200 feet across the street on the same street with the same address. So, for example, here, let me just push down. I don't know where you see. Okay, so push it down. Thanks, Vanna. Okay, so what we did, the house that's a little bit darker, that's the proposed house sitting in context. What we did is we included everything out to Osceola. So actually the house that's next to the north, we included that. We included the other houses on Osceola that are effectively across the street, even though they don't touch on the street. We obviously came down all around on Mountain Drive and then came up to the properties that are above. So even though our property doesn't abut the one at the top, we included that. So we looked at 11 different properties. So next, I guess, one up. Yeah. So we looked at these 11 addresses. We used the town of Greenberg's GIS, that's where we got the coverages and all that information. And then we just evaluated it. And what I thought was kind of appropriate for us to point out to this board is basically of the 11, the property that we're proposing is smaller than 6 of the houses. The 11, it's larger than 5. The lot that we're dealing with is smaller than 7, it's larger than 4. So we're in the middle of what that kind of mix is. And again, that drawing, or that image that we showed, I think that, you see the houses, how they relate to the lots. And it's not like we're imposing on anyone. We're not like looming on anyone. There's not those words that often come out. I think we fit in nicely with what all of this works out to be.
Where is it in the coverage? You said building area. Where does it fall in terms of coverage? Go back to the chart.
Yeah, if we use the way that we use the GIS, which doesn't include certain things, it doesn't include porches in their coverage. They break that out, so we made everything be consistent with that. We're at 16%, there's one at 17, the average is 12. We're higher than that because we're on the lower half of lot size, on the upper, well, just in the middle in terms of building size. So, our coverage is 3,724. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 properties that have a building coverage that's larger than what ours is. The percentage is different. The size of the house that you're seeing in the context of the neighborhood, it fits in the middle of the neighborhood. Is that clear? Okay, cool. And I didn't know if that's all just, this was in there because it showed how we did it in case anybody had a question about it. This probably you don't want me to go through, which is just the fact that having done this for a very long time, we've done over 30 projects in the village, which have used the gross lot area in determining building coverage, but not for your board to concern yourselves with. Yeah. And we did confirm that many of the other architects, people who are architects in town, have also used the gross lot area. Yes. Consistently.
Yeah, we unfortunately, that was.
Next.
I think I'm done.
Okay.
That was exactly 3 minutes.
The end, well, I don't know, is Nick on?
So
I mean, it's really, I can probably do it if he's not. Anthony has provided a series of comments at the various meetings. We did not submit these drawings since the last one because we really don't want to submit anything more until we have a public hearing. But what they did do is they made all the adjustments that Anthony had noted needed to be made. For example,
Sorry to interrupt, I'm here.
So
just got added. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Okay. Good evening, board members. How are you? Nicholas Shariah from Hudson Engineering. So just wanted to go over any of the engineering comments that we've received from AI engineers, which were dated February 16th. I have gone through and addressed all of those comments. Not sure if you guys have received a copy as yet, but basically the comments broke down to adding a profile of the proposed driveway. We've done that on sheet C-4. Our grade percentage is between 11.67% and 8% on that proposed driveway. The proposed infiltration practice, the comment revolved around making that compliant with the setbacks and proximity to foundations. I revised that and we are now compliant as far as any setbacks that are necessary from the property line and the foundation, while still being capable of fully retaining stormwater for the 100-year storm. So we are good as far as the stormwater system goes. The other comments were basically about the erosion and sediment control and beefing that up somewhat. We have taken steps which are shown on my sheet C-3. Sorry, I don't have control of the PowerPoint. If we can go down to the sheet C-3. So we have including a sediment basin in the northwest corner of the property that will capture any runoff from sloped areas uphill outside of our limits of disturbance. We have also added a double layer of silt fence at the front of the property right before North Mountain roads to protect and prevent any runoff from entering North Mountain and increasing any runoff on that street. We're also recommending weekly inspections on the erosion control just to make sure that the site is in good standing as far as all erosion and sediment control measures. And that's basically most of the engineering comments that we received from AI engineers. But as far as the stormwater and erosion control measures, we're pretty sound on this project.
In summary, we believe engineering-wise, we can fit this house on the property. It fits within the size and the scope of other homes in terms of massing in the, I would say, not just the immediate neighborhood, but the large surrounding area. We do believe a waiver would be warranted for this application.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think these variances are just a little too large, or these zoning code violations are just a little too large for me to be comfortable with a waiver. I think that would have to go through the ZBA for me to be comfortable.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess we could, however, recommend to the, and I'm a little, my only concern about the ZBA is that they've had returned the project to us twice. The first, just sort of, the original thing was a question about whether the site was even buildable because of drainage and other issues. I think the applicant has shown that they can do it, and our engineers, right? So that, which seemed to be the biggest question, has been answered. And then we started our review of the project, and before this issue of net versus gross came up. And so I feel a little bit like, I'm just speaking for myself, if we're going to refer it to the ZBA for variances, my guess is they're going to want a very affirmative statement from us that we think those variances are worth granting, are worth granting. They're not going to make that determination on, without that. So I think it's important. So it's probably, it would probably be good for us to maybe take a kind of informal poll about the extent to which we think that the project, forgetting the net versus gross thing, just do we think, which is what we're supposed to determine, whether or not this project is appropriate for the site in terms of its overall disposition and scale and so on. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to accomplish by just sending it to the ZBA without some affirmative determination at this time. So I'll lead off, and I'll say I would endorse this project. I actually think it is on the big side for what it is. I'd be interested to hear from the public. So I think probably a public hearing probably soon makes sense. If I'm honest with myself, I have to say that before the net versus gross thing came up, I was leaning towards approving this house. So I feel like I'm reluctant now to say I wouldn't approve it because of the net versus gross issue. So that's the way I feel. But I mean, I think there, obviously we need an affirmative number of us if we're going to ask them to get the variance. I'm more comfortable with them getting a variance and us waiving, because I think that's a power we like to use as little as possible. But I think we should, if we're going to send it to the ZBA, it should be with a very affirmative idea of kind of once and for all that we actually think this site's buildable and this project is close enough for them to consider the variances.
Good point.
My question is, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I'd like to hear from the public.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, so can we send it to the send a recommendation to the ZBA and open the public hearing? Because
I think, Dan, I think the ZBA was interested in getting this application to the point of you're ready to vote on the application and then send it back to the ZBA. So I don't see why you couldn't continue that process until you get the application to the point that you're most comfortable.
yeah, because it would make a difference if the
Right,
public
if all the-
comes
right.
in with torches,
Right.
or
Right.
they're behind it. So.
Dan and Dan, you both agree?
Yes.
That would make me more comfortable, I guess,
So just
to hear from the public.
for clarification, this project is 100% code compliant if you use the net calculations?
Not with the calculations they're doing.
I'm sorry, the gross calculations.
Right, then you're using gross, not net.
Right, is it 100% code compliant using gross calculations?
No, it is using, using the gross.
Yeah.
I'm
Using
sorry.
gross. But not net.
It is 100% code compliant with
With
using
If
gross
you use the
calculations?
gross lot area of the lot, yes.
Yeah, correct.
And with net, it's over like 20% or something like that, or?
No, it's significant. I mean, it's significant, but
I think it's a little large.
It's like 50%.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But the issue is, before getting, I mean, and I've been asking myself this question, the thing is, forget whether it's 10% or 15% or 20%, we, as we do, and to the extent that we have discretion when we look at these things, we think, for us, it looks too big, it's too big for the site, it's too big for the neighborhood. Just taking the scale of the variance thing off the table for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there are other houses that are big and, so
They
it's
also have more property.
not, yeah,
They
it's not
do,
totally
but-
out of.
Well, it's a very strange site, because actually, I think even once they build the house, you're not gonna see it.
Right, yeah.
It's hidden.
Yeah, it's sort of tucked into the hillside.
Yeah, it's.
When you go around, yeah.
So
Coming down the street.
It's,
It'll have a presence on Mountain Drive. But I mean, I think there's been a real attempt to get it into the landscape.
Yeah.
So should we call for public hearing, hear how the public
Yeah.
kind of feels about this?
Yeah.
And then we can make some affirmative, if we're comfortable after that, make some affirmative recommendation to the
I'd be
ZBA.
happy, because the people on that road it's a funny thing, because once they build a house, you won't see it, because it's up. I don't think you'll see it, but,
No, I agree.
Well, I think it's going to loom over the street. I'm
will.
actually, just to put my 2 cents in, I feel like it's a large house.
It is.
For
Well,
that-
I
for that
said it's
location.
large. It says large. I don't know if it's large for that
sits
location.
back, but anyway.
So maybe we should call for a public hearing.
What do you guys think about a public hearing?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that would work.
Would it help this board if Patty provides some renderings showing from the street?
You had some,
Right.
you
no,
did,
Yeah.
right.
But specifically,
From the street, from the view
from the public, yeah.
Yeah, that would be useful too.
What I can do is by actually including your work, I'll have them do it where it's like walking up and down the street. So you'd see as you're coming down the street what you actually see.
With the
Yeah, that's
existing
okay.
building, with the other, let's say the immediate buildings that one might see
I'm
as.
hoping yes, but I'm so far from being able to do that.
But stills are okay, you don't have to.
Yeah.
do it.
Yes, well, and that's normally I would walk in, as you guys know, I'd walk in here with a street elevation showing how we relate.
Yeah, that doesn't,
You don't have to.
3 sites away from
right.
Just how, what you can see.
Yeah.
But mine,
Render.
so helpful is,
In terms of what Alan's great concern is the house looming over, in reality, this house is actually not a tall house. It's not, often what we're dealing with is something that feels very big, looming. This actually complies 100% with the site, with the heights, and we fit in, and we try to mass the building back so that what you actually see is the front of the house is as the same width as the houses that are smaller across the street.
I think the street view rendering will help me visualize that a lot.
Okay.
We'll see.
That's also a lot.
So we should call for a
Yeah,
public.
okay, all right. I move that we call for a public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right.
Over to the street and the property line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we done?
Right.
If you shared property with its neighbors and the street wasn't right there, then if you look at it, just as a spacing, it's not.
The next item on our agenda, item number 2 on the pre-submission, 34 Clinton Avenue, continuation of pre-submission conference for proposed renovation and addition to existing building.
Fees for everything else. No.
I don't have any aspirin, sorry. So usually if I brought my diet
Parking,
parking,
or they just have 6 spaces out front
Yeah, much better.
I'd like to move some spaces back.
to the
I
back.
don't know.
Again.
I don't know. Did you see the most recent?
Didn't eat dinner yet.
Just 6
Oh,
spaces.
no.
It's great. I think it's good.
Latest plan only has 6 spaces in front and 3 pairs.
4 would be better.
Of course.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Christina Griffin, the principal of CGA Studio Architects, and we're here with our team. John Sareva, the owner, Karen Schubeck, who's an architect, and Louis Fusco, the landscape architect. We last met on site and showed you the perimeter of the building on site, and we're here to show you our latest drawings. I think we'll start with our zoning chart. We wanted you to know that we have made changes to use net lot area when we do the calculation for building coverage. So there's a few areas on this chart where we've changed that. Even the lot area we're using for a number of units allowed, which we meet code using the net area. And then down below, for the building coverage, we're showing our scheme A is the same scheme we showed you last time, but using the net lot area, we would need a waiver for 431 square feet, which is 1.6% above the maximum. We're also going to show you a scheme B, which we submitted, and that is a layout that would need a waiver of 3.3%. And that's because scheme B is putting 4 parking spaces under the courtyard. And when we use the underside of the courtyard as a building, now, even though it's the same, looks the same, it becomes a structure. It has to be included in the building coverage. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of some of the points that we found in the letter that we received from Westchester County, dated February 14th. I just want to point out, they said that the proposed development is consistent with the county's planning board long-range policies. They also said they confirmed the development furthers their fair housing requirements because we have one affordable housing unit. They said that the site placement, they understand that placing parking in the rear yard is difficult because of the slopes, which is why we have parking in the front yard. They recommend use of permeable paving, which is something we've done. All the paving will be permeable. And we looked at their comments, and we're going to show you a Scheme B that does more to reduce the amount of parking in the front yard and reduce the amount of paving in general. Next item is they recommend that the village reconsider parking requirements. They mentioned that maybe we could have some space for future parking, but not develop it as parking, just to reduce the amount of pavement in the front yard, something we can talk about. They've asked us to put recyclable waste room in the garage, which we've done, and we're going to look at the county requirements to make sure we comply with the space that's needed for that. And then the last item, they encourage sustainable building technologies. We're complying with the stretch code now, which is pretty high energy standard. We will be having bicycle parking, still yet to be determined, and will be done once we determine our final parking layout. And universal design principles, we have, all the units are handicap adaptable. Next slide. Then we looked at the letter from the consulting, the village planner actually, who said that we should be using the net lot area, which is why we changed our calculations. So I'm going back to the two schemes that we submitted. Scheme A, we thought was as of right, but now it would need a waiver for a small amount, only 1.6%. And then Scheme B is a different scheme. It's the same building, but we're putting parking under the courtyard. We also, which would need a waiver of 3.3%. We also have a Scheme C that we'd like to show you. We brought with us tonight. It just goes a little further, puts the parking under the courtyard, but it also reduces the amount of paved area in the front yard. Both schemes are compliant with impermeable coverage requirements. Then after our meeting on February 2nd, we now have, in response to some comments, we now have a bioretention rain garden to mitigate runoff in the back of the building where the ground slopes down. All surfaces will be permeable pavers, like I mentioned, and we will also have a privacy screening in addition to what we had before along the front property line. So now I'm going to show you the plans. Just to compare existing and proposed, we put what we're calling the demolition plan on the left and the proposed plan on the right. This is our Scheme A. This is actually the same building that we designed and showed you at the last meeting. The only difference is we would have to get a waiver of 1.6%, and that's for those areas. You see those areas that are colored and with a blue line. Those areas add up to approximately that 1.6%. And it's actually all those areas except for the porch are mostly above grade, by the way. They're overhangs. I think next slide. This is just a blow-up view of Scheme A and the areas that are beyond the maximum building coverage. I think we showed you this last time we developed our roof plan. It's very nicely articulated with some of the similar ideas from the style of the original house. From the beginning, we wanted to preserve and restore the exterior of the old building. And then we added a building that is very similar in scale as seen from the front yard, similar width and similar roof configuration. And then as you go around the building, we have gables and dormers and then a tower feature that is in keeping with the style of the time period of the Victorian house next door. Now, Scheme A. I'm going to, I think I'm going to let Louis Fusco now take over so he can describe how we've developed the three schemes now, A, B, and C. He's going to go through the different parking areas and landscaping for each scheme.
Hi again, Louis Fusco, landscape architect. I met a number of you out on the site. As Christine had mentioned, A was our previous presentation that we discussed at the site. And looking at this particular option, I know that a couple of the comments that came up on site was the drainage in the back. I think it was a concern of one of the neighbors, the water coming down the back. So we've added, actually, I'm wondering if the rendered versions may show it a little better. We have up in the top that green area in the photo of the planting plan shows a new bioretention rain garden, which would slow down, although all of the permeable paving on the site as well as the drainage has been calculated for the building in infiltrators on the site. In addition, we've proposed this, which would be a drop off in those areas that would allow some of the water coming down the slope to first go in there, and an overflow that would then run into the actual drainage infiltrators. The other concern of neighbors was the possibility of headlights from the parking into the neighbor. I know in one of the letters from the neighbors that we just received, there was concern that they commented on evergreens. From the first submissions that we've had on our planting plans, we've always had a minimum of, I think right now we have 14 to 16 evergreens that wrap the perimeter beyond the hedge that's there right now. There's a privet hedge around the property, and as you know, in our climate, the privet does drop its leaves. So we have these evergreens, and they're specified. They're not little trees that are going in. They're specified to go in as 8 to 9 foot American holly and arborvitae and juniper. In addition to that, we have approximately another 16 evergreen shrubs and almost 20 deciduous trees and additional shrubs that are coming in. This is quite a nice buffer that is being planted around. Getting back to the parking, because I think that's probably the most concern, this particular option here, we can pass on to option B. Okay, you can flip to the rendered version, I think. Yeah.
We can discuss parking when it's done building.
Yes. Okay, go. I'm sorry, that's why it's there, right? Yeah. Yes. The dark blue area, thank you, Karen, are where we've extended underground that Christine has mentioned. In order to, on option B, in order to reduce those 4 spaces, we were able to put them underneath, and that eliminated 4 spots outside, which brings the site plan. And again, there, no change to the building. It's still all underground. So that allowed us to eliminate 4, and in the site plan, we have this new configuration here where I've got 2, 2, and 2. It breaks up the parking, gives us a lot more green space. We still have the blockage with the barriers, which I'll show you a detail of that. I know that was a concern of one of the neighbors also, of what that fence barrier would look like. So that would be like sort of that first level of blockage of lights, then plantings from behind it. And as per comments on the site, the entire paving now is all going to be a permeable paver, so it'll be so we've gained that. And any of these plans, A, B, or C, meets the lot coverage. We don't need a waiver for any of that. We're under lot coverage on all of them. But impervious coverage, yes, I'm sorry. We can pass on to option C. In considering what we did come up with, and I've actually have copies of this that I could pass out because you haven't seen any of this yet. But this is a third option that we come up with. If we're to receive the waiver,
two pages.
The second plan, the first plan is the rendering. The second plan has the planting plan, and that was a question from the planner also. The planting plans have been developed for all 3 options.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you.
So with this option, we eliminate any of the parking to the left side of the property, so we'll now be able to create this large green lawn space. We have the parking, we're showing the 6 parking spots similar to the previous one, but instead of the drive coming in center on the building, it's going straight more towards the new building and the new driveway. If you can see on the rendering here and on the plan in front of you, those yellow X's are based on Westchester County's comment of possibly waiving some of the parking. We could actually knock this down to even 4 spaces out front and provide the provision in that area that it would be a level green space that could turn into parking in the future if the need arose. It seemed from, at least every time I'm on that street, I can always park out in front. There's always 4 spots available out in front of the street. So I think that the need may not be that important. I know one of the comments from the community also was just going on and on about the change. This particular, that blue line is what's there now. That's the existing driveway loop. The existing driveway and access there is actually a total of 4,600 square feet. Our new plan has is a total of 2,592. So we're almost half the amount of paved area, not to mention ours is impervious as compared to the previous. So this plan, I think, greatly, improves the condition, the environmental condition in the front, as did actually B. If you prefer B, we're still open to either of them. As a board, I know on the site meeting, comment was they like to have the board's input on these things. We just trying to think outside the box a little bit, trying to figure out another way of creating more green space in the front. Also, with more and more people working from home, and we thought being able to provide the space outside. We now have lot coverage, allowable extra space, that patio space become a little larger even. The children could be playing out in the front lawn. You were all in the back. It's a pretty steep area to get back down to. So I think it provides a lot more amenities for the site. And we have a gate coming from the sidewalk with a walk that would come in as well as being able to enter from the parking area there. I think I touched on most of it. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that.
Not a question, that's just my personal comment. I've been in the village a long time, and I've always viewed this as one of the nicest residential streets in the village, especially the front end of it. And my concern is that we're turning it into something else. And we're making it into a big building. It's not a big house anymore. It's a big building. And that changes the characteristics of that street, that part of the street. And I think that's a shame.
I think from the point of view of, and I understand where you're coming, there's definitely change in that area. It definitely, from the rear of the building, it is definitely much more imposing, but I think from the front, I think Christine and Karen and the team from architecturally, I think they've married the two, and with the large trees that are going to be going in here softening, I think ultimately our goal is to end up creating something that does fit.
Yeah.
I have a question. First of all, thank you for trying to minimize the effect of the parking lot out front. I think you've made progress in that regard. But one of my concerns is all this planting out front sort of isolates the building from the street. And I'm not sure that's the most desirable thing. I mean, if you're hiding something that's negative, yeah, but otherwise, do you really want to hide your building? And I wondered if you put the 4 spots where on the west side of the property and hid them and then opened up to the street, so the walk to the courtyard and the left side of the front of the property more to the street, so they were more visible. It would be less isolating. And I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but that's something that I thought would be more attractive to me.
No, I agree that removing these trees on the southwest corner allow a view directly to the old building, whereas the larger trees you're putting in around the parking lot tend to break up the new building, which would be good.
We would be open. I think our earliest plan had less screening along the street, and I was going back and forth with getting neighbor comments, wanting to hide things, so, but we would definitely be open to playing around with that. The only challenge I have on the right or on the west side with the parking is the slope that we need. I have to play with that a little bit. The slope that we need to get down into the garage and I can, if we're limiting it to 4 spots and we allow the opposite side as those future spots, then it could be. And I think that could look at that as an option.
And the other thing for me personally is I would be more interested in approving a waiver for lot coverage in order to hide the parking spaces under the courtyard. I think that's in the public interest and therefore more interesting.
Yeah, I think I agree too.
So I know we're trying to get to a public hearing at your next meeting. We'd have no problem making those adjustments that where you see us, to give us direction to get to that next public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine with me
Okay.
to do that.
Yeah. I just have another question about the rain garden. In that corner, remember the site visit, we walked there. It's a pretty steep slope in that corner. So you'll raise the lawn on the east side to make that a hollow or something, or?
What
how does that
happens
work?
is, let me just, thanks. Yeah. We have it graded already on one of our site plans that the engineer has not worked out the final drainage is going to be essentially the same. It's actually should be down less because we have less pervious, but yeah. So basically, what I've done is this edge of the rain garden would be lifted up, the grade that's there right now. We're cutting approximately 18 inches in the lower part so that we're able to get the water to come down in, settle there. The whole idea of a bioretention rain garden is you want the water to sit for a certain amount of time, infiltrate. In heavy, heavy storms, there would be an overflow pipe that would feed itself into the existing drainage system and the infiltrators. Fortunately, the infiltrators, the way the engineer is designing everything, even though the driveway is permeable, we're double calculating because it's our requirement in this town. So actually, these infiltrators are going to be empty most of the time because we're already taking the water in the front. So they'll be, in a great storm, we're actually having extra capacity for it to take in that area. So I think that would all work.
I know you're not responsible for water coming off other.
I know,
properties.
exactly.
But
We're not,
that gully there, gets filled up with water.
Yeah.
No, I know, I asked you to look at that and to try and deal with the Clinton River, and thank you for doing this.
We're going to do the best we can with that, and everyone knows that it'll definitely be a major improvement from what's there right now.
Also in the village interests.
Two thoughts. First of all, I also appreciate the willingness to do these iterations, and the drawings are always beautiful and very clear, and we really appreciate that. Two thoughts. One is on, and I agree with with Steve Brosnahan and with Alan in particular, that more than willing to waive this small coverage thing for the sake of getting more of the cars off of the front and underneath. In fact, when I look at this, I'm wondering if there's another variation of this, which might net out to the same amount of asphalt and so on, but I don't, but it also raises a question for Dan. about curb cuts, and that is, I'm wondering if, and I'm thinking of the house that's being renovated 2 properties up, which has a kind of, it had a sort of arc-shaped driveway, and I guess was sort of the ceremonial way of being dropped off. And it looks to me like if we literally reduce this to the 4 or even the 6 spaces, you could almost have a kind of, instead of a lot at all, have what is essentially like an arc, one of these sort of arc-shaped drives. It would mean there'd be a second curb cut, and I don't know what that entails. We can have another discussion about that, but I could imagine a situation in which, a fairly narrow road, basically big enough.
That's the key there.
Well,
We looked at it before. The problem is, once you start laying out a width for someone to get by, a width for someone to park, God forbid a truck tries to get through this. This isn't a little bit of a residence. When we laid it all out, we lost all green space in there to do anything that legally could work. It's, we have 11,
It looks like it's almost there now, but.
We would lose the green space. I mean, what's there right now, if cars really park all along it, in the space, you're not able to get cars around them. It's just too tight. So if you try to make it to meet current engineering, and we tried, because we were trying to play with it, and it came up.
Okay.
And because we're trying to get down into parking. If I didn't have to go down to the parking, so now we're taking all the coverage to get down to the parking, we're adding all this, and we're losing the greatest asset that we're now creating, which is a big green space.
Okay.
So I'd rather tuck all the spaces over to the side, try to screen them as best we can, as your colleague mentioned here, and then I think we may do a better job. I understand your point, though. A loop may look more typical residential or something that, but I think I'm just worried about safety.
Okay,
Cars
well,
sticking in the middle of the road.
Regardless, this is like a vast improvement over any of the previous schemes in terms of the way you're dealing with the
You're talking
parking.
about scheme C.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
the new one.
The new one. And then, since, it's like, be careful what you wish for. We're now the AHRB, right? As well as the planning board. I used to get slapped down for what I'm about to say, but now, do we have to like officially open a separate AHRB thing for me? Okay. I have one other thought for Christine about just an architectural thing that I think would be interesting to see. So, you have these 2 buildings, right? You have the existing one and you have your new one here. And I'm wondering if there isn't a scheme, this is just me riffing, it's not, I haven't discussed it with anybody else, whether or not the thing in the middle, the knuckle, which is largely circulation, it's like whether that could be treated as something completely different. That's a third thing. I think all of us have probably seen additions, like at a certain point, just trying to stretch the existing architecture is hard. If that kind of place, that knuckle between them, I could almost even see it being treated in a completely modern way, by the way, but I won't necessarily go there. But when I look at the elevations, like, if you, sorry?
We're going to bring it up. Yes.
What?
We're going to bring up the elevation.
Yeah, if whether there would be a break in the roof line for that element so that it was not at the same height and somehow treated architecturally, that light zone that you have in the middle, treat it as if it's a third thing, right? Because I'm sure we've all seen like those kinds of additions where there's a different element that kind of makes the knuckle between the 2 buildings. And I'm just wondering if you would consider doing some design alternatives that looked at that.
Sure. I'd like to respond.
Mhm.
One thing I love about this house,
I think we have to use the mic.
The design of it and the porch that's deteriorating.
Right.
We have to replace no matter what. But we turned it. We're rebuilding it because we felt like it has so much character. And that's one reason why we did this design, and that led to the other design that kind of goes with the building. But I would definitely look at that. Another challenge for us is this is our elevator core.
Right, I saw the elevator
Has a
and
certain
stair.
bump that almost looks like we're hoping, like a chimney. And we had to disguise the height of that. We've enclosed this with mostly roof, but we can take a look at other options for that. We also pushed it back as far as we can. I also wanted to also respond to Stephen's comments about being out of character. Our goal was to have a building that this building here is actually the same width as the original front of this old house, so that this would simulate the scale of a large, very large single-family house, and that this would be pushed so far back that it would recede, so that you would really kind of sense of two big house facades when you're looking at the building from the front. And just to recap, then we
Christina, can I say to that point, like
but this could be different, and we can explore.
Maybe, or at the very least, there could be a break in the ridge line. Like right now, it looks like the ridge line carries straight across.
This is the elevator, yeah.
Well, I see this, I see the top of the elevator tower. I'm talking about the ridge line in this direction across.
Right.
Is there a break, that there's no break in that in terms of height?
No.
From the heights of the two pitched roofs on either side, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
We have
Like if that could break in some way?
And actually, we have a break, and then this is actually kind of like a mansard, so that it is broken. It's not just straight up, but we kind of decided to make as much roof as we could to keep down the mass of that piece.
So it isn't the same. It's funny, in the elevation, maybe I was misreading it, it looked like.
No, it does look like it.
It looked like the ridge line for that piece was at the same height as the ridge line.
I think
the other
you're right.
dormers.
The elevation does show that. Let me take a look at that. I have a
Okay.
feeling it's not,
Anyway,
not right.
enough
But
said.
I also wanted to mention, just to respond to Stephen's comments, if you could bring up the facade facing north, please. Okay, north, please. So on the north side, this is not the same as our original submission. We took a lot of time and effort to see. We actually reduced the square footage of the units, and they're not that large for 2-bedroom, 2 baths. They're like range from 1,200 to 1,400. We made this also a piece of facade that gets recessed back, so that you have the sense of 2 large homes on the side instead of one long flat wall. And we have gables and dormers and a tower feature. And as we go around, we did the same thing on the back, where we punctured the building, and instead of having decks coming out, this is actually recessed. This is a recessed area where the deck comes out at an angle. There are a lot of bay windows there on this old house. Well, there's 2 of them, I think. And so there's this angular shape here. There's an angular shape at the bay. And there's this break and recessed wall that breaks up this facade. So we made a lot of effort, and we put the plan down here so you could just see what the shapes are. This is not at all one big mass. So it's like I've studied a lot of the old Victorians and worked on them, and so it's a similar concept. So, even the tower feature is a really nice way to break up the box.
Also, we talked last time, you had a Google aerial.
We did, and
with the roof form. It's okay. You don't have to bring it to the
I think we'll have to have that for the next meeting.
Anything else from the board? I think for a public hearing in our next meeting.
Just for clarification, when you call for public hearing, you're going to have scheme C presented to the public?
I think so.
And one other thing, Dan and I were looking at the plans, and Anthony the other day. Just take a look at the square footages of the different units, especially the affordable housing unit. There was something in there about calculating, including the porch into that calculation, so just double check, because it seems a little bit off. Yeah.
Okay, I move that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next item on our agenda, 56 Shady Lane, pre-submission conference for proposed construction of stone retaining wall in your rear yard.
Steve.
This works.
Anyway,
Quite powerful.
Stone retaining wall, I guess.
What do you say?
he likes this idea of trying to make a different
Oh,
thing out of that.
sometimes I'm for that called a hyphen.
You know, like, just
Or
think
knuckle.
of that in architecture.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have a review?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're doing it this way.
What triggered the planning board review of this wall project?
This one, we would ask that it be waived. It's just they're moving the 300 cubic feet of soil,
Okay,
so it triggers planning board review.
got it. And the wall height's 4.5 feet, is that what I saw?
Yes, it's over 4 feet.
Hmm.
Greetings.
Greetings. Good evening. My name is Michael McGarvey. I'm a New York State licensed professional engineer. I'm here tonight to represent the application, 56.
Shady Lane?
Shady Lane, thank you very much, sir. 56 Shady Lane. My client, Fiamma Gomez of DeWitt, she, not here tonight, she got ill, and she sent her mom.
Welcome.
So mom's filling in for her. Any questions, you got to speak to mom. But anyhow, this, she's new to the area. She's new to the country, actually, or recently new to the country. And she started building this wall, and the building inspectors found her. They put a stop work order on her, which is obviously 100% legit. So now she's just trying to get back into it, get this wall completed for the summer. The wall is 4.5 foot high at the maximum height. The total length of the wall, it's a U-shaped wall. Did you guys see the
Yeah, I'm looking at
plans?
the plan.
It's a kind of a U-shaped wall, and it was constructed so that my client's daughter could kick the ball in this area without it going out into the street or going out to somebody else's yard, basically. So it's a lot of money for a little wall. And that's pretty much it. I know that there is a 300 cubic feet, is that what it was?
Of soil, yeah.
Yeah, cubic feet or square feet?
Cubic.
Cubic feet of soil, any disturbance, then it sends us here. So that's why we are here. Just for the excavation of the footing.
Okay, so what are our actions here?
Waive it.
Just
We're
waive it.
hoping,
Well, I'd like to just make sure there are no concerns.
We would ask, right, that it be waived, but it will still go under engineer review
Right, engineer,
Yes.
sure, of course.
for drainage and everything.
Okay, I have no problem with waiving it.
Yeah.
Me neither.
Not at all.
you guys are the best.
Need a motion on that?
Yeah. They need a motion on
We
it.
need a motion.
Waive site plan, probably.
Okay.
We waive site plan
I
review.
move that we waive. Is that enough?
Site plan review.
Waive site plan review.
All right, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Waive site plan.
Thank you
review.
very much, guys. Good work to wait.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. Come on, Mom.
Go get a coffee.
Gotta get her home.
All right.
To the forest.
Next item on our agenda, item number,
7.
7 Bramley Lane, pre-submission conference for proposed replacement of railroad tie retaining wall.
Good evening, Chairman and Planning Board members. I'm here this evening. My name is Anthony Levisano. I'm the owner of 7 Bramley, here with my wife Nancy. And on the line, I have Chuck Scott. He's he's the contractor for our project. We lived at 7 Brandon since we got married back in 1983. So we've been around a while. Now, yeah. Now, this retaining wall that we have in the back of the house is a railroad tie retaining wall. I believe you have pictures of it in your package. Now, what has happened, the wall itself must be over 40 years our purchasing the house. And I'm speaking not just as the owner, but also as a licensed professional engineer. There's extensive rot of the timber, especially in the wet of the steel. You can see in the picture, that's just one section, there's bowing out of the railroad ties. Now, this is a life safety issue and should be replaced. You know, I don't feel comfortable from our family living here as well as from my neighbors. And what I propose to do is replace this wall with a Ready Rock gravity wall. And I believe you have a picture of a similar wall that the contractor has installed elsewhere. Aesthetically, far superior to what they are now. It will enhance the value of my neighbor's property and provide a safe measure of protection forever, and also for us as well. So we'd like to do this. We got your comments from your engineer last night. I had cataract surgery, so I'm ready to talk about each item. I'll talk about items 1 and 2, and the contractor, Chuck, will talk about the remaining items. As far as the first item for the sill screens and whatever, yes, we will do that. I will ask my neighbor this evening to give me a survey so we can provide this information to the board. You know, 100% we will do that. Now, as far as the second item, access to the site. My neighbor is willing to provide access. He's not saying no. However, what he said to me is that he wants to see what is being approved by the board before he provides access. So it's like a catch-22. What comes first, the access or the board's approval? And I'm sure the board is aware of the state law that will grant, you know, access to the site, because that's the only feasible way of doing it. And I have the statute here, but I don't this time it's necessary to rehash that. That said, I'll proceed to number 3. And Chuck, if you're on the line, if you would please address the following issues. Chuck?
She may be letting him in.
Any comments from the board? Do you need a public hearing on this? Is this?
Do you have to give him access? Give Chuck access?
Excuse me?
No, I was just asking the technician. No?
He's coming on, Christina.
Oh, he's joining me.
No, it's not a public hearing anyway.
Go, Chuck.
How tall is the wall?
It varies. It starts at about 11 feet high and then tapers down to about maybe 8.
Okay, I'm here.
Here, to about, it's about 90 feet long.
And it's about 90 feet long.
Correct.
It's a big project.
And very expensive.
I'll bet.
Well, there's this thing you can see.
It's not making me very happy.
Well, at least you won't lose part of you won't lose your pool.
Well, however, you know what I'm gonna do, you know, my wife loves the house, take dynamite to get her out of it. I have no choice.
We like that you like that ferry.
Chuck, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Tony.
Okay, so let's look at item number 3, that's regarding the proposed drainage for the site.
Sure. Good evening, board. My name is Chuck. Yeah, typically these walls are built with some type of drainage, perforated pipe behind the wall to collect water, so that it doesn't stay behind the wall and put pressure behind the wall. But with this type of a block, it's a big block. It's 4 foot roughly wide by 1.5 feet high. And the spaces between the block are anywhere from an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch. So the pipe's really not necessary. It's sort of there as a standard. So we can actually design this wall and eliminate that pipe behind it and not create a point source area of where the water would come out. It would sort of bleed through the entire wall. And then also with respect to 3.
Chuck, if I may interrupt.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
if it ever reaches that point, if we have over 100 tons gravel behind the wall, so in essence, the structure itself is acting as a dry well.
Yeah, it's a giant infiltrator, basically. And then as far as 4, all the calculations and geotechnical considerations for the wall design will be submitted, of course. And then number 5 was the property line. We will show the property line on the cross section.
So the only hangup that we have right now is as far as the access site, if the board could give us contingent approval, in getting access, either, my first desire, to amicably work out an MOA with my neighbor. I have copies of what we have presented so far. He told me he, at that time, willing to sign if the board approves it. If not, then, I have no alternative, which I would rather not do, litigate pursuant to, what is it? Real property actions and proceedings law, and it goes on and on and on. So I'd rather not do that. I'd rather amicably work it out. Because it will enhance his property, provide a safe backyard for him and his family.
If I could maybe make a suggestion. The applicant's presenting this Ready Rock system. If the board doesn't really have an opinion on that or a preference on that, or maybe, the main thing I think is the disturbance and the access. The engineering will happen, the calculations and all that, that'll have to be submitted before a building permit, but maybe if he, makes that agreement with the neighbor based on this design and what it's gonna take to excavate and remove the old wall, where he's gonna stockpile materials, access the site, if that's what the board's concerned about as well, maybe to work that out, get that okay.
Well,
and
if I may interrupt, it's a 2-week project.
Okay.
We will, the contractor will minimize any stockpiling of material on the site. We'll provide, cover over it.
Right, but I think you probably have to work from the low side of the wall, right? I mean, the wall's exposed to the neighbor.
No, it's,
This is Bramley.
Bramley, yes.
This is Bramley.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So I thought.
access has to be granted one way or the other.
Neighbors on the downside of it.
On the downside, right, right. So I don't think you could really do everything from the upside and you're not gonna be able to stay on your side of the property line for sure. It's impossible. No, I'm not saying you should be restricted to that, but maybe you made a comment that your neighbor was concerned about what the board would approve for a wall. Like I said, if the board doesn't have any specific preference on the material or the look, or if you want to see other looks, that's one thing. Okay, but if not, then you could go with this type of construction, discuss with the contractor what the disturbance is, and maybe get that agreement in place with the neighbor, if that's a concern.
Yeah.
But that's gonna have to happen one way or the other, but if the board wants to see that happen before you approve it, that could be, if that's your concern of the board, then maybe that it could happen that way.
Yeah, I would be concerned about the stockpiling and stuff.
Yeah, I think that should be the first step,
A mess.
access, because
Yeah.
if you don't have access, you can't build a wall.
You could offer the neighbors some plantings or something. The wall looks good. I mean, the simulation of the wall looks good.
Well, I was going to say, I have a problem, which is, it may not be a problem. It's like, I guess but it is an AHRB issue, and I think it's an issue for the neighbor. the picture of what's shown here, what's put here as a simulated picture of the new retaining wall is not anything like, unless I'm misunderstanding the engineering drawing. What's shown in the simulation, which is a very nice wall, is a random multicolored stone
That's
wall.
exactly what we're going to provide. However, it will conform to the elevation we show on the plans. This is a wall that the contractor has in fact constructed. So rather than have, I couldn't draw one, so here it is. The wall will look just like that, except will be according to the plans and specs, approximately 90 feet long, starting at.
Then there needs to be, then the section that he's showing, which right now, the section through the wall shows, you're not doing anything other than cutting through interlocking blocks. There's no, so if there is going to be a stone face veneer of some kind on this, which sounds great, it needs to be shown in this section. The only thing, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding.
Rob, the precast blocks are consistent sizes, and the randomness is just cast into the face of the block.
Right.
I don't know if that's what maybe
No,
throwing you off.
you're answering my question then.
So
it does.
So the randomness, so they're not placing like random sizes.
No, I'm just saying the way
Right.
that, so you think for this wall system, the simulated picture that is,
I don't have it in front of
that's
me.
being shown here.
That's
That's my,
Yeah.
that's what it will look like.
That's what it'll look like, yes.
Okay.
There are different options.
One
There's
of
lots
the
of different
previous
options.
drawings, it actually specs out that we will be using Ready Rock, and I forget the name of that particular design.
That's ledge stone, that face.
This is an actual photograph of it, so it's.
Yeah,
not-
that's actually a real wall that we built.
Oh, okay.
Right, but is that, I guess I'm just,
We will be.
I'm looking for
we will
some
be providing
absolute
our earlier
certification.
drawing.
What,
Say ledge rock, Ready Rock, that specs out the stone itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that's what I'm looking at, but that's
Yeah.
not what, if you
What-
look at the section,
Rob,
Yeah,
if you
so-
saw a picture, say, of an individual precast block that goes in, it's gonna be a consistent size block. They're all, the same
it has
sizes.
random,
And they'll have, it's, in the precast face of the block, they put form liners with different textures. This is one of the things we were actually looking at
for the,
at Gould
cool. So
originally,
does it
yeah.
look convincing?
I don't get
I mean, you may not be convinced it's stone, but it looks good.
It doesn't just look like a set of.
Depends on which one you pick.
Precast
It looks
block.
better than a.
You may see on some of these,
Timber wall with it.
yeah.
That may be, but if you were the.
On some of these, you may see some of the seams sometimes, of the blocks, coming through. But in general, they look much better than just a plain.
Yeah, okay.
If I may, sir, on this drawing here, drawing 4, shows, it's not colored in, but it shows Ready Rock.
I know, and then the section does too, but if you look at the section, what you see is you see these precast.
Yeah, I think I
you see
answered. I think what's throwing
He answers.
throwing them off is the randomness of the texture, and then
Don't
the
see it in
section
the
looks like
section.
a consistent block size. That's all.
The block that's drawn on the section is actually a limestone face, so it doesn't have the cast in place individual stones.
The one they're selecting has a different finish of the base that's uneven.
So if the applicant, discusses this with the neighbor, they may come to a conclusion as to what the neighbor likes also. The neighbor's gonna see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's no
okay.
public hearing.
So they may have an opinion as to which texture, because there's a number of different textures they could choose from. And then maybe they come back at the next meeting with
Yeah.
a sample or a picture.
My concern though, sir, is that neighbor, dealing with them, even though we've come up with this memorandum of agreement, gone through many iterations, we've included all his, concerns, and then he seems very reticent, not reluctant to sign it. So I am not particularly confident that I will be able to reach agreement with the neighbor with an MOA and will be forced to litigate. And if I have to litigate before I come back to this board, that's another issue. I'd rather, again, as a compromise, possibly get the board's approval for the reconstruction of this dangerous wall contingent upon getting access, regardless of how I'm going to get access, either through an MOA or through litigation. My preference is
Yeah.
through an MOA. However, in the alternative, if need be, I will litigate.
And you,
Depending on the
Because I have
access.
no choice. I have to rebuild that wall. because
No,
my
I understand, but
insurance
depending,
company will not cover any liability.
you've shown the design to the neighbor, you know, the brick face and everything, and they like that style, or?
I have one quick question in terms of process.
Yeah.
John, does this, John, again, this needs ARB, correct?
Yes, this will
Yes,
need
so this will
ARB.
need to come back for an official ARB application. So at that point, you will definitely be able to hear from the neighbors if you're interested. I'm just saying that there's going to be another round of.
But it makes sense for him to just show the neighbors the wall,
Right.
and whatever style they like, because they're gonna be looking at it, you know, they can
But
pick that, and that might help the process.
I wanted to also say, you mentioned a couple of times there's an emergency situation with this
When I
wall.
say it's emergency.
If it's in danger of collapsing, then you have to take some action, and that would be
not-
something separate with the building department. That's
not
not for this
imminent.
board to deal with an emergency situation.
Again, I'm being proactive.
No, I know, I'm just
Not
saying.
imminent. I dare say there is time, I'm talking, at least a year. I have time. Time is on my hand. I'm not the kind of guy that just waits the last minute and have a disaster on my hand. I wouldn't want, my house, is important to me.
I don't think the planning board has an issue with this
No.
project, so so if your neighbors want to know what we think this is a great project and it should go forward. My only question is, which I guess we'll have to do since it's an AHRB application, is I'd like to see a couple of other, well, I don't know that, if you're going to certify that this looks like, it might be good to see some other photographs of this kind of interlocking block and what the face looks like. But other than that, I don't think the planning board has, this is not like.
No, we just want to see it well organized.
Right. So.
The wall looks fine to me, it's
Yeah.
just like staging.
And it makes sense to do it.
It's gonna impact the neighbor the most.
Well, if we're gonna keep it here, we gotta go to a public hearing next month.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second, aye.
Aye.
I just suggest come back with an access scheme, how you're gonna access the wall, so the board knows that, and with whatever texture you're looking to use, and maybe some more examples of that.
Yeah. Maybe some more photographs or other similar installations, something like that, which it sounds like your contractor, your engineer
Is
has.
this something that the building inspector should look at to see if it's a dangerous emergency, or?
I just put to John, we'll stop out there and take a
Okay.
look at it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, because could make a difference too, if it's really
Yes.
gonna fail.
And we'll deal with it.
Okay.
Well, as a professional engineer, there's a lot of redundancy built into the wall. There are steel H columns every 10 feet that support this.
Yeah, I saw
So
those.
If any failure of a particular railroad type does happen, it won't be monumental, it'll be a onesie.
Okay.
Not really concerned. I'd say you have at least a year or 2 years without any issue. And I look at this wall, we've done okay on a regular basis.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Could I just suggest, if there are a number of finishes, since they're the ones that have to look at it,
Sure.
you might want to give them the choice of which finish to
I'm okay with that.
Hey, one last thing that I just wanted to mention is that, regardless of what happens, I don't think the planning board should be in between, the applicant and his neighbor.
Absolutely not.
So
Well-
you can't issue an approval contingent on them coming to an agreement.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Just to be.
Totally got it.
So, for me to be clear though, if we are unable to come to an MOA, memorandum of agreement with ourselves, I'll have to litigate and then come back to this board.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
We can't issue a condition approval and then your deal falls apart for another reason,
Yeah.
and you're suing the village. So
Right.
But you heard informally that we we don't see any problems
Yeah.
with it.
the expectation or the hope is that the neighbor hears it and
And understands it, makes sense.
is maybe satisfied.
You can't, next month,
Yes, it's a public hearing next month.
next month is a
Next
public
month.
hearing.
Next month. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you all.
And did
Thank you.
call for
Thank
a
you all.
public hearing on the-
Oh, that's
just
a good
the
point.
AHRB or the planning board as well?
Huh?
Oh, planning board, public hearing, and AHRB, public hearing.
So basically,
But we don't know what the finish is yet.
The
Both.
site plan, we're both,
Yeah,
right?
do both.
Okay,
Do
all
both.
right, just checking.
Do we have to vote on that, or did we?
No, you did. We'll just make sure the record is
Great,
clear.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, item number
April
5,
6th.
86
April 6th.
Maple Street, pre-submission conference for proposed two-lot subdivision and new two-family dwelling. Who's going? You going? He's going.
Sure.
Stuck.
Come to the restaurant, that one down in, Johnson.
Ah, really?
Sorry, which project do we want to look at?
Train down there.
Okay.
He sees you all the time in a restaurant at Yonkers. Which restaurants do you like? Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a good one, yeah, I
There'll be
like
one
that.
guest.
I like that restaurant.
yeah, that's what he said he said. Guys,
We're thinning out the crowd.
Yeah.
Is this Maple?
No, this is 164 Palisades, because they're waiting for something else.
No, this is Maple.
No, we're switching.
Oh, we skipping?
Yeah.
Wait.
What are you, your presentation is 164 Palisades?
64 Palisades.
Oh,
Oh,
how do we do that?
Oh, because the other guys weren't ready or something.
Right next to
Is it
it.
the same applicant?
oh, yeah,
The same
yeah.
owner, maybe?
What happened to these guys?
I don't know.
Unless they saw the way we were working.
No, the way we're doing this now is whoever gets to the microphone first. That's how we're doing it from now on. It's going to be more like reality TV. We're going to drive up our ratings. People are going to watch for a change.
It's just curious.
It's going to be planning
You
board.
survived the planning.
Planning board Dobbs Ferry.
Extreme planning.
Ooh.
That looks good. Beautiful.
Oh, I know.
That's the wrong project. Aren't you doing 86?
We switched it.
We
They
switched.
switched.
Oh, okay, okay.
I want to go.
All right.
Yes.
Don't worry, I was confused.
Oh, that's a great picture.
Oh, that's what, that's not even the one I was,
And I can hear that construction every day.
Is that your hole there?
No, that's,
I know it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Pete Gulick from Mike Lewis Architects here at Dobbs Ferry, presenting 164 Palisade Street for owner Michael Lang, who's here with us. House was built in 1888, and we're proposing a 2.5-story addition on the right side over here. First thing we did, Michael asked us to kind of restore whatever character it might have had at some point, so we went to the library, Historical Society, looking for some old photos, and unfortunately, they couldn't find anything for us. So then, of course, we looked at Palisade Street and the Palisade Street guidelines, and those were helpful, particularly in creating these transition zones between public and private.
drawings in.
The Cedar Street entry now is sort of alley-like, and there's a large retaining wall with a chain link fence over here on Palisade Street. So we're transitioning through on both of those areas, which you'll see later in the set here. Last month, we were approved by the zoning board. We had some minor variances for non-conforming,
Extending non-conformings.
existing non-conforming conditions. So we're here to present the site plan and the exterior AHRB planning board item for you.
Do I understand, I understand from the memo, I've looked at the drawings, they're beautiful. I guess you're going to go through them.
Yeah.
But was there a zoning, did I see in the memo that you have or have not submitted the zoning?
It's been approved at the zoning board last month.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, we're
Excellent.
major issues, just the existing, we're tied up against it like a bunch of
Sure,
Palisade Street.
sure. You get it.
So this is the first sheet. I'll just go through the drawings. I'll go through quickly through the ones that aren't pertinent, and then we'll take a look at the site plan and some of the other ones.
Side by side. Like just
This is the corner we're here, the Palisade Street's the main building, and then the smaller, I guess it was the former garage probably, is 87 seater. This is
Do you
the,
want me to move them on?
They're working out the MOA.
Reality TV style.
are the police still here?
They're right downstairs.
Thank you.
Okay, this is just the photos of the streetscapes. We've also got the drawings too, another AHRB drawing. This just gives you an idea, looking up Main Street, this is coming down Cedar. And right over here, another one of Cedar to Palisade Street coming around the corner. And then some of the aerial photos, backyard. Site plan, it's got the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. Got proposed storm drainage systems up here. And we've also
He just wanted to switch.
It's the same owner.
I'm sorry? Same
We just
applicant.
switched the order. It's the same owner, same app. So
Just a quick question, the smaller of the two buildings, I've never looked at that one closely. Is that a single-family dwelling?
Single unit.
Single unit?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it was a former garage of some kind because there was, you know, here on, this used to be a pull-in driveway. So it might have been some kind of, I mean, this was the garage entry on Palisade Street.
That I'm
but
familiar with, yeah.
It has a garage, old garage type feel, but it's a one.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
does look
one-
like it.
Do you have any idea when it was built?
Well, the original house, 1888, but it doesn't say anything about the, you know, the garage, or the former garage.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, some of the houses in this area are old. You see them in 1850, 1830.
Oh, really? Yeah, that early? Oh.
Some of the plans.
Yeah, we're disappointed we couldn't find something.
Yeah, this is the house. This
So they didn't have anything at the Historical Society?
No.
Wow.
No.
is here.
They didn't.
Not, but there's maps. You can find things on old maps.
maybe you can't see the character.
Never really went back that far, it seemed, but,
You might have some. I mean, the Library of Congress has.
oh, yeah, maybe.
Anyway,
maybe
sorry.
town on it, but, so the site plan, you know, what we're really doing is opening this up so it's more of an inviting courtyard off of Cedar where you enter into 3 of the dwelling units. And then down on Palisade Street, where we have now 2 walls and a chain link fence, we're kind of opening that up so you can come up into this dwelling unit that's on Palisade Street. And then as well as coming up and around into the site so you can have access there. And these are these transition zones they talk about in the Palisade Street guidelines. And that's really helpful here. I mean, it's really kind of closed off now there. So it's nice. That's a nice part. And then this is the landscape planting plan and lighting plan. Just putting some small shrubs in the front. And then this is the only flat area of the site really. So we're just putting some plantings from here on the perimeter to shade that yard a little and give it a little privacy. So those are pretty simple.
So how many units are there now?
Now we have 1, 2, 3 units, and we're adding, it's be a 4 units altogether. We're adding 1 unit in the unused part of this used to be the former garage.
Okay.
So it's abandoned space now, unused, and the addition comes out on the right. So, you know, that used to be a little smaller space, and now we're able to get a decent sized 1-bedroom in there. That was a good photo.
So that's two additional units?
Just 1 additional.
Just one, okay. You use part of both of those spaces?
Yeah, you come in here, there's a unit in the 87 Cedar, and there's a unit from here that's first floor, the first floor unit, and then you come in here and it goes up to the 2nd and 3rd floor, which is a combined unit. It's a really nice unit, that one. And then from the Cedar Street entry, basement level down here, that's the 4th dwelling unit that was added.
These are beautiful drawings.
Yeah, yeah.
And then to move on to the plans, which I'll just move through pretty quickly. The existing on the left and the proposed on the right. And then these are just showing the, where we're looking at in the elevations. This is just key elevations. Not much in the cellar here except for moving some of these old oil tanks and other things that are unused down there. The chimney, the entire chimney, which we're not using anymore since we're switching to electric pumps. This is the basement level where we enter down on Palisade Street for this new one-bedroom unit here. And then into the side, we can go up and around, and then into mechanicals.
So that's right next to the big hole, isn't it?
Yes.
You mean 156 Palisade Street?
Michael's other side, that's your
It's not a hole,
project.
it's a
Big dig.
foundation.
Big dig.
How come the sloped roof on the top, I'm just curious?
I'm sorry, say it.
The sloped roof, excuse me, on the new elevation,
Here?
proposed west elevation? Yes.
What about it? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm asking, how come it's a sloped roof?
We wanted to do peaked roofs on the sides. That's what we first looked at on those. But we really ran into the same thing you run into now is there's a height issue with, I can go back, see the side here. This is an unusable roof now. It's only a closet. So when we did a gable roof, everything got higher, the front and on this side. So that's why we went to the shed to try to keep it down, try to keep the mass down on that addition, 2.5-story.
But from the street, I mean, you wouldn't ever see that because it's set back.
You didn't see it from the street. You'd see it from, if you're further down in Palisade Street, depending on the.
Oh, right, from the south side.
Yeah,
But from the Palisade Street facade, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I think it's deceptive. Elevations you look like you're looking directly at it, but.
Right.
And it's also back, we've set that at the 2 stories that's set back 5 feet. And so this piece is set back already by 10 feet.
Yeah.
And then the 3rd story set back another 5 feet.
Yeah, that's cool.
Guidelines, so it's also set back.
Very nice,
Okay, thank you.
very nice.
It's deceptive, though. The elevation makes it look,
Right.
like you're looking right at it, but
Right.
yeah, you're really. So then again, basement, 1st floor, the addition on the right here. You were really only added about 8 feet of house, took down sort of the smaller pieces that were there already. Off of the line. 2nd floor, and most of the addition, you come in off the stair landing, right out into these nice spaces. They're all, they're beautiful views out, not just this way, but also this way. So we're really trying to open up that front a little, so that's a really nice space for you to use that onto the water. And then this also goes up to the 3rd floor, which comes up to a landing, and then a nice balcony where you can look out from here down onto the river, and then a main bedroom. Roof plan, again, we've got a shed dormer there, a little one on the front, then a smaller dormer in the 87-seater, just to give a little light to these upper bedrooms that are small. Now the elevations, we've got the existing elevation on the top and then the proposed on the bottom. It's one of those cases where the existing drawing still looks kind of nice in the drawing, but you can see it's got some funky parts to it, and it's aluminum siding and.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, maybe I have to zoom in more. You're still doing clapboard though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the existing.
In the drawing, it looks so faint, I thought.
It is faint.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's there, it's clapboard, it's
I see.
hardy plank clapboard, smooth clapboard. It looks very much like the old clapboard siding. Yeah, it's here, it's kind of, I think I put it behind where it should be in front, harder to see. And then the other thing we did was this, the bay here sticks out about 3.5 feet with aluminum on top. You can touch it when you walk by the sidewalk. So we kind of pulled that back. It's more this way, and then, it's only 18 inches deep. Nicer on the street without feeling like it's right up against you. see it here when you're, how tight it is on the piece here.
If you're going with heat pumps, where will you put the condensing units?
We have a little corner over here. There aren't many places on this one, but there's a notch back here. We'll probably hide, 4 units, probably 4 of them here, and then another one over there. I haven't, designed the system yet, but that's the intent.
You can stack them vertically too if you have to.
Yeah, some of them get, they're here, but I thought the same thing when I was putting those there to kind of minimize the space. And then moving around, this is the Cedar Street elevation. We've taken out the old porch, it has an alley-like feel, and then, kind of pulling the 2 buildings together with the pergola that comes across, so it makes it a nice courtyard off the Cedar. Then moving around to the front elevation on Palisade Street. Again, this was the old garage that was kind of cut off by the ramps and railings. There's the regular, the stone wall. There's another wall, chain link fence. So we're opening this up to a much nicer, lower piece. And then that's where you enter this lower dwelling unit on Palisade Street, as well as walk up to the side, back into the
That's great.
backyard. And then this is just looking back between the alley now, where we've got this porch. Taking that down, and also just raise the roof to match the same, on 87 Cedar, to match the same roof pitch as 164 Palisade. That helps too, just to kind of tie the buildings together in a way that they're not tied together now. And then coming across, looking back up towards Cedar Street, they've sort of built this wedge up in the backyard to get a flat piece of land there. So we're, proposing to take that back down. And that's how you get around and up from Cedar Street down to the street, like sort of carving that out.
So that's behind the building? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Behind the
that's
Cedar Street building?
Yeah, on this side, we're looking.
Gotcha.
And again, that pergola that comes through and around sort of ties it all together in the back. And then the dormer, small dormer on top of 87 Cedar. And then there's the dormer we're talking about, the shed. You can see, I think you can see in this drawing how if we were to do a peak roof there, it really starts to pinch what we can do. And I would have loved to do a peak one, but it's, we didn't want to run into any height issues in the front. That's that elevation. Then we move around to the back, sort of when you're inside the courtyard, look down. Move down here is the center of the addition. And again, looking at all the way in the back, looking from the neighbor's yard, sort of 83 Cedar, back towards back of 87 Cedar. And then this is just the AHRB sheet, 2 elevations, and then some of the materials, existing materials on the left, and then some of the proposed. Just like making the base of it look a little heavier. There's brick on most of the base, so we clean that up, repoint it, and paint it sort of a darker color. And then the proposed finishes are a lighter gray hardy plank with some white trim. It's pretty simple. What's predominantly on Palisade Street, these lighter colors with whiter windows, exterior frame, and the trim. And then on these smaller streetscapes, this is the Cedar Street scape, excuse me.
Say that 5 times. Yeah. Cedar Street Seascape. Cedar Street Streetscape.
83 and 81 Cedar. The small driveway between, and then this is the Palisade Street streetscape. Cedar Street on the corner, next to 156 Palisade here.
Looks good.
Just material palette, and then last but not least, we have the stormwater plan. I said, we've got most of the tanks, all the tanks in this flatter piece, and lucky enough to have 2 existing stormwater drains in the front, so everything is picked up there. So that worked out nicely as well. Nice and efficient.
Good.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, first of all, the drawings are like amazing.
Okay.
They're beautiful. And also the format of showing on almost every sheet, existing on the left and proposed on the right is like great.
It's so refreshing.
We should require it. Anyway, but I do have one thing
We
that,
argue about that in the office, that's what I'm not, sorry.
yeah, no, the drawings are beautiful, the way the information's organized and rendered and everything. But I do have a problem with one thing. And it's good that you're on this elevation, and maybe it won't surprise Michael, because I think we had a similar issue on the other building. I have a real problem with the balcony, the corner balconies that you have there,
Here,
which,
on the,
yeah, which don't, I'm not about to say you don't have to have the balconies, I have an idea, but that does not exist anywhere on Palisades, that kind of thing. And it doesn't, to me, it feels like something out of a different kind of architecture. And I feel like the solution might be for them to be treated more like porches rather than as these, like, how are you even doing that? Is that poured in place? Is that a slab?
oh, cantilevered out from the new.
It's so thin. Yeah? You're doing it just with
Yeah.
I
2
might
by
have put
whatever?
Inside those
And anyway,
brackets on the sides, they're hidden too, but you can't see, but I understand what you're saying.
anyway, I'm wondering if it could be treated more like a porch, that there might actually be columns
Yeah.
or something from that architecture. I don't know, you'd have to find an example. That could be in the corner somehow, so it looks like they're
Yeah.
somehow more like porches and not, because these kinds of balcony things with the double, are they sliding doors or are they French doors?
French doors.
That's better. But it's kind of
It's more of a modern.
completely open corner balcony thing is like from a different architecture. And I think that could be, if you could, you're obviously super skilled and really talented. I'm sure there's a way you could
Yeah.
to treat that in a way that makes you feel like it's more like the architecture of the street.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
That's my only, otherwise I think the whole thing is, I think it's beautiful.
And easier to build.
Huh?
And easier to build at the same time, but no, yeah, that's, yeah.
So should we call for a public?
Okay, we
hearing?
need to call for a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay.
Is that okay, Dan? You're looking at me like.
Somebody second that?
Second.
Everybody seconded.
Oh, okay.
Pick a name, pick any name.
One thing this board's gonna have to discuss next time is the parking. The applicant is not proposing any parking spaces.
Right.
And they do require parking, so there is a portion of your
It's
code
across the
that
street.
allows, well, there is a portion of the code that does allow the planning board to determine the
right.
parking during site plan review, so
Right.
we'll need to have that conversation.
Have you thought about that at all? Are you counting on street? Like, have you thought at all about
Yeah.
what you want
I
to
mean,
say?
it's tough, you know, there was a parking spot here for the town built, and there was a garage on the bottom, so there's really nowhere, literally.
Yeah, no,
Good.
I'm not advocating for it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you gamed it out in terms of
Oh,
like.
I mean, the parking lot across the street's pretty nice, that's,
Yeah, we've had that discussion and that's kind of ongoing.
One unit, right?
I
Or
think I was laughed at last, the zoning board asked if they might waive the fee up beyond it. They said, no,
Okay.
but, that's,
And
it's nice to
increase-
have that right across the street.
increase in how many units? 2?
Just one.
Just one?
Just one.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Wow.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, then we got a backup. We got,
And Michael, you want to go back up to 173? You wanted to,
86.
oh, right, 86
86
Maple, right, sorry.
Is somebody waiting for 173? Because that's, is there anybody online, Christina? That's, I think we were gonna ask to get to have that waived, so.
Yeah.
Whose built project is it?
That was a swimming pool, he's actually
At the
reducing.
swimming pool.
Oh. Is there anybody on, Chris, 170?
Yeah,
Do
I
you want to
thought
do
that we,
173 quick?
Sure.
Oh,
You're recommending a waiver on that? one?
yes.
Okay.
They're reducing the impervious surface and everything.
Yeah, I remember, we looked at it last time, right? Yeah.
Can we waive it without him being here?
Yes, he's recommending, the building department.
Hi.
We waive it.
Okay.
All right,
Okay?
Hello?
all right.
Hi, can you
on.
hear me?
Hang on. We were almost there.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, my name is Faye. I'm representing Edward Butler. I'm from Nail Associates on this proposed pool. The size is 16 by 24 feet. And we're taking out the existing paver patios in the backyard and putting a new in-ground swimming pool.
Yeah.
And we're submitting the drawings for review.
I think we were on the cusp of waiving.
Just to clarify a few things, you said the impervious surface is decreasing.
It's decreasing, they are moving the soil because they're digging the pool, but it's no impact.
And it looks like there's a
property.
there's a retaining wall associated with this?
Nope.
Really?
There is about, there is a small, like very lower retaining wall next to the
less than 4
paver.
feet?
Yeah, definitely less than 4 feet.
I don't remember seeing a retaining.
I think
It
it's
was really low.
about 2 feet high retaining wall.
If it's under 30 inches, it doesn't need a permit, so
But that's an existing wall, or is it a
Yeah,
proposed
existing wall.
It's existing now.
it's existing.
Mhm. And we are also removing some of the paver sidewalks in the backyard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are there any engineering issues associated with this?
No, we would just require standard sediment and erosion control
They-
measures.
They will get reviewed by the engineer too, the plan.
We provided the soil erosion plans for review.
Let's
All right,
waive it.
I'm good.
Let's
Yeah.
waive it. All right, I move we waive.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
All right. Enjoy your pool.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Great, so last one is Maple.
All right. Item number 5, 86 Maple Street. Here he comes.
Good evening, Board. My name is Dom Majorano from Community Designs and Engineering. This is my first time presenting to you. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can pull up the plan. I didn't know I could access the plan and then show you there. I printed out the plan and site. I could probably just hold it up.
We can probably.
We
look at
also
it.
can look at it online.
Okay. Yeah, sorry,
Either.
but next time I'll be prepared. But, so basically, this is a 2-lot subdivision and a new 2-family dwelling. We did receive approval from the zoning board with one, I guess it wasn't really a condition, but they wanted a sort of recommendation to move, because most of the houses on that, area on DeVoe Street, the home is, very fitting into the size and character of the neighborhood. Most of those sites are very small. This is a through, lot where basically Maple Street, there's an existing dwelling that's not changing at all, but the site, basically gets split in half, and our new 2-family dwelling will face DeVoe Street, and the access will be from DeVoe Street. But most of those homes on DeVoe Street are pretty close with proximity to the front yard setback. So what we did was we moved the house from what was, in front of the zoning 2 feet forward. The reason really just for that 2 feet was try not to create, any additional variance or the steepness of the slope of the driveway to access the garage. So that, obviously the greater distance, the less slope we have accessing that garage. The garage is basically in the basement level, but basement level, meaning it's pretty much at grade, so there's not really much of, excavation other than we're actually filling it, excavating for the foundation, footings for the dwelling, but we're filling in a little bit of the backyard and somewhat of the side yard. So there are proposed retaining walls, very small retaining walls on this site. They're basically the most 2.5 to 3 feet high. They're interlocking retaining walls on the right side. So yeah, just to go through, I guess,
It's on the screen too now, if it's easier, she
Oh.
got it up there.
Okay, so, yeah, again, that's the site plan. We are proposing, basically, so to the left of this there's a residence, I think it's 41 to 43 DeVoe. Doesn't have the same characteristics of our proposed dwelling, but it has like a front porch, so similar to that one to the left, we're, kind of creating similar architecture features of that home, but to the right, again, is a similar condition as what exists today. The house mainly is, a shed in the back, but the house is mainly facing Maple, so there really isn't any home to the right of our proposed dwelling, so we kept the 8-foot side yard setback on the left and 7 on the right, and there's a retaining wall, the neighbor's retaining wall on the left, about probably 6 feet high. Stone walls, our condensers are on the left-hand side of the new dwelling with, some existing evergreens and planting as depicted in the site plan. Then, I guess just to go through, you want to go through the elevations and what that is? Yeah. Well, just quickly, your typical plan layout, oh, you could go down to the plan. Thank you. All right. So floor plan layout, again, just, that basement area, sort of at grade, garage. As you walk up, your normal living kitchen area, and then the top floor is the bedrooms. There's a little balcony out back. These are some just the pictures of the neighborhood. Again, like I said, I think it's 41 and 43 DeVoe Street, which is somewhat has a little characteristic of that, but shows how the area has this sort of same, similar small envelope context of, a site. And that was recently constructed a few years ago. And then elevations, typical materials that you see throughout, hardy plank siding, Anderson windows, asphalt shingle roof, and all the AZAC is, white AZAC trim, stone veneer on the bottom half of the front, and PVC, railing at that front porch. I think that sums up the overall idea. We did receive some comments from the town consulting engineer. We didn't have time to get back to them, but we'll obviously, continue to go back and forth with them to.
One thing I'd just like to add, but it did not include in the comments, this is a subdivision, so you'll have to provide a plat, preliminary plat for review.
Yeah, there is Richard D'Amato, I believe, the surveyor.
Okay.
In the packet there. I don't.
Is it in there?
In the application.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the site plan and then the subdivision plot that.
It is in there. Okay, great, great.
I love these two streets. I like either Maple Street and DeVoe Street. They have some great little buildings on it.
Yeah, it's really mixed over there. I mean, there's not really like a, it's almost like a building type house there, so there's nothing really to say, okay, this is the type that you want to sort of mimic and go with, so. Typical
I love this
multifamily homes.
the street.
Yeah, that's the key. You don't want to put something weird in there.
We did that already, across the street,
Yeah, I think that's true.
one of our great moments.
Yeah, this is, a detached, just typical.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, well, with my sort of AHRB hat on, I realize this is a kind of, like, the scale of the building and everything seems fine, I get all that. The building is very, very, well, it's kind of characterless, to be honest. And I guess I'm wondering, without trying to artificially inflate, like, what it would cost to do this house, because obviously I think it's a pretty inexpensive kind of house. That's, I guess, that's the idea probably. But there, I mean, I feel like there ought to be a way. I mean, well, I have a couple questions. First of all, in the garage elevation, they're shown stone veneer of some kind. Does that wrap, but I don't see it on the base of any of the other elevations.
It does, no, that's just the stucco veneer. The other elevations, what we could do is, probably wrap it a couple of feet to look like,
I was gonna say, it always looks cheesy.
Sure.
When there's like a
end to it.
facing material that you can see is basically 2 inches thick, it'd be better to not do it. Maybe you should do stucco. I mean, do stucco with some kind of pattern, maybe that would be better, I don't know. But if you're gonna do that kind of stone thing, you have to figure out a way to resolve it around the corners.
Yeah.
And then I would just look at whether or not, first of all, the depth of the eaves could be further so that there was more of a substantial shadow between the ends of the roof and the facades, and whether or not the trim around the windows, whether the windows could also not have a little bit more dramatic shadow by either pushing the window back a little bit and making the trim a little bit more substantial and a little bit forward. Maybe the header of the window has a little bit more substance to it, so that it doesn't look quite as flat, right? So that it looks like it has a little bit more animation in terms of the depth of what you're doing there. I mean, I realize this is inexpensive builder's house, and there's a place for that. The street is not a super fancy street, but I feel like we ought to be able to do more without adding a whole lot of money by sort of trying to create a little bit more depth and shadow and animation in it than what is here.
Well, maybe take a walk up and down the street and just get a sense of what the street really looks like.
Yeah, well, no,
Well, it's very uneven, I know, it's
Yeah,
like
that's
there's some ugly ducklings and there's some nice things. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make this the prettiest duckling we can, right?
That's, yeah, exactly what you said. It's sort of more of the budget factor and, okay, what we should do and not do as far as some architectural detailing and aesthetics. Again, across the street, that newly developed sort of attachment, has some sort of that simple stuff going on, not to say, less is more. In that case, we could look at some architectural features to give it some, maybe more pizzazz.
I mean, like, if you look at your picture number 4, for example, that's a beautiful little house. Got a whole bunch of stuff going on. It's not an architectural
Sometimes
monument.
the single families help that too, but
Well,
no, totally, yeah.
But, and your number 5, some of them are kind of funky. I don't know that I like the architecture, but they don't look flat.
Totally.
They look like there's some depth to what's going on. So I would see if there isn't some kind of,
I mean, I think for me, I feel like the top is very plain, that the upper floor, and then there's so much concentration of elements on the bottom, so it seems not proportional to me. So that you know what I'm saying, like the stairs, the windows, the garages, the stone, there's all these busyness going on down below, but then above, it's just 2 windows.
we approve the padding.
So I think like it just doesn't feel proportionally correct for me.
Sometimes it's gable going up,
One too. Yeah, that one.
material on that, maybe a
Well, it's
roof
just like
break.
this
Totally.
like vast space with
Sure.
2 windows, and then below it's like all this stuff going on.
Totally.
So I feel like it's not balanced enough.
So, I mean, I think from a planning point of view, I guess there are no real issues. I mean, they're meeting all the code requirements, I assume, and all the 2 lots end up being both conforming lots when it's subdivided, Dan?
Sky exposure.
I'm sorry. Well, sky exposure wouldn't mean anything here.
They
It's nothing
received zoning variances.
Yeah.
Okay. That included lot size?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. He got the variance.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's like
Yeah, I think it's typical of the rest of the block. It's not out of character with the rest of the block.
How is it elevation-wise compared to Pietro Place? Pietro, 50 yards away, there were 5 feet of water.
They were a lot higher. Pietro drops down a lot
Okay.
over there.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check.
Yes, it's a.
From Pietro to there is a good 12, 15 foot drop.
Okay, thank you.
That's on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
Maple, where they had all that work? Yeah.
we're trying to do as minimal grading as.
Michael, is this also your project? No. Oh, wow. Well, you're busy. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, because there was another scheme that Patty presented that was the one that had the cars on the interior. I lost that.
It means anything below townhouses.
Means nothing to me. That's great. No, that's good.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the more simple features kind of went to it because of what's.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, from your other projects they've done, like the one we just saw, that's really interesting architecture. I understand there's different place, different market, but I think there could be a little more happening here, right, to make it a little bit more interesting.
I move that we call for a public hearing in our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Great.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Are we done?
Appreciate it.
We're gonna move to close, are we done?
Yeah,
We're done.